Umayyad authority weakened under heavy strain. Discontent spread across provinces and populations. Opposition gathered quietly beyond imperial reach. Revolution brewed beneath surface of order. By 750 the spark ignited. Abbasid revolution overturned the reigning dynasty. Armies marched under black banners determined. Old rule collapsed faster than expected. Abbasids claimed descent from Prophet's family. Lineage granted religious legitimacy and support. Revolt framed as restoration of justice. Faith reshaped political authority decisively here. Victory shifted power dramatically eastward. Damascus lost status, influence, and command. The center of gravity moved swiftly. Reorientation altered Islamic world permanently. Mesopotamia became new imperial heartland. Baghdad rose from marshland to masterpiece. City planned for knowledge, wealth, power. Architecture mirrored confidence of new era. Trade routes converged across fertile river valleys. Merchant scholars' envoys traveled unhindered frequently. Baghdad connected India, Persia, and Mediterranean. World's knowledge flowed through its streets. Intellectual life flourished beyond expectation. Greek, Persian, Indian texts translated widely. Science, mathematics, medicine advanced at speed. Learning became symbol of Abbasid strength. Caliphs cultivated culture, not mere conquest. Poets, astronomers, jurists thrived under patronage. Empire wielded soft power brilliantly across regions. Influence replaced territorial expansion gradually here. Thus began an Islamic golden age. Knowledge, wealth, diplomacy reshaped global history. Abbasids defined civilization through innovation deeply. Legacy extended beyond borders and time. A revolution had shifted the world. Religion, politics, and culture intertwined completely. Baghdad emerged as unrivaled cosmic capital. Discover the world's greatest civilizations with us. Subscribe now and journey through history's epic tales. Every day we unveil stories of empires and wonders. Hit the bell icon to never miss an adventure. The Umayyad Caliphate ruled vast lands. Power concentrated mainly in Arab elites. Non-Arab Muslims felt increasing social resentment. Inequality and favoritism caused widespread unrest. Opposition groups quietly organized across provinces. Persians, Shias, and disenfranchised citizens united. Discontent grew under heavy Umayyad taxation. Secret meetings plotted for radical change. Abbasid family claimed noble lineage proudly. They promised justice, reform, and equality. Their call attracted people from many regions. Mass support swelled rapidly across cities. Propaganda spread through mosques and markets. Abbasid slogans emphasized fairness and inclusion. Religious leaders encouraged rebellion through sermons. Unity strengthened among diverse Islamic communities. Military campaigns prepared for a decisive battle. Abbasid generals trained troops rigorously and secretly. Allies coordinated across desert and river lands. Strategic planning ensured a stronger revolution force. The decisive battle occurred near the Zob. Umayyad army faced Abbasid troops, badly outnumbered. Marwan II fought fiercely but ultimately failed. Abbasid victory reshaped political power forever. Celebrations erupted across liberated towns and villages. Old Umayyad symbols were replaced completely. Citizens rejoiced at the end of oppression. Power shifted to a more inclusive administration. The fall of Umayyads marked a turning point. Islamic world entered a new political golden age. Old hierarchies gave way to broader governance. Faith and unity guided the new leadership. Abbasid revolution inspired future Islamic political movements. The defeat of Umayyads reshaped the Middle East. Chroniclers recorded the dramatic overthrow vividly. It established foundations for long-lasting Abbasid rule. Peace and order gradually returned to provinces. New leaders emphasized justice and religious guidance. Abbasid administration promised fairness to all citizens. Inclusivity became the hallmark of the new caliphate. The revolution emphasized unity over ethnic divisions. Persians and Arabs worked together harmoniously. The empire began focusing on culture and knowledge. Science, art, and scholarship soon flourished broadly. Abbasid authority now spanned far and wide. Military and administrative reforms strengthened the state. Loyalty shifted from tribal allegiance to caliphate. A new era of leadership had begun. Legacy of this overthrow lasted for centuries. Future generations remembered the fall of Umayyads. It became a symbol of righteous rebellion. Power shifted to those who served justice. The Abbasid Caliphate promised long-term stability. Its foundations were built on unity and fairness. Old rivalries began slowly fading under rule. The Islamic world embraced a new direction. Revolutionary change reshaped social and political life. Citizens enjoyed broader representation in governance. Caliphs now ruled with moral and religious authority. Abbasid legitimacy rested on both power and faith. The overthrow demonstrated strength of unity and faith. Oppression gave way to inclusive governance structures. Abbasid rise set standards for future empires. Change inspired hope across the entire region. Abu al-Abbas came from Abbasid lineage. He claimed descent from Prophet's uncle. This strengthened his legitimacy across the empire. People saw him as a righteous leader. He was proclaimed the first Abbasid Caliph. His reign began a transformative new era. Abbasid rule promised justice and equal opportunity. Citizens looked forward to peaceful, stable leadership. Safa was determined, brave, and disciplined always. He personally oversaw crucial battles and campaigns. Rebels and Umayyad loyalists were decisively defeated. His military strategy ensured consolidation of power. The people celebrated his leadership across provinces. Cities welcomed Abbasid administration enthusiastically and proudly. Religious scholars supported him as rightful caliph. Mosques echoed praises for the new leader. He implemented reforms to strengthen central authority. Provincial governors were appointed for better administration. Old Umayyad officials were replaced gradually. Governance became more organized and efficient quickly. Abu al-Abbas maintained strict law and order. He encouraged trade, agriculture, and economic growth. Merchants and citizens prospered under his leadership. Stability returned to regions long under chaos. His title, al-Safa, reflected decisive war actions. He was feared by enemies, but respected widely. Yet he sought fairness and moral governance. Leadership balanced firmness with justice and wisdom. Safa set foundations for future caliphs firmly. He emphasized merit over birth or wealth. Knowledge, culture, and science were encouraged broadly. Baghdad would soon rise as a center. Abbasid support grew among distant Islamic territories. Many tribal factions pledged allegiance without hesitation. Unity under Abu al-Abbas strengthened empire stability. The caliphate became more inclusive and integrated. Abu al-Abbas inspired loyalty through personal example. Generals, scholars, and citizens trusted his decisions. Military strength and religious legitimacy worked together. Abbasid foundation was now firmly established. He laid the groundwork for Baghdad's future. Economic prosperity and cultural achievements would follow. Caliphate shifted focus from conquest to governance. Empire stabilized after long years of turmoil. Abu al-Abbas' rise reshaped Islamic political structure. New administration emphasized fairness and religious guidance. Unity and justice became central caliphate principles. His reign would be remembered throughout centuries. Abbasids needed strong legitimacy after victory. They relied on religion and public support. Lineage from Prophet's family strengthened their claim. People trusted them as rightful Islamic rulers. Revolutionary success showed their political and military power. The fall of Umayyads symbolized moral authority. Abbasid leaders promoted unity and justice loudly. Faith and fairness became central caliphate principles. Abbasids emphasized inclusivity for non-Arab Muslims. Persians, Turks, and Shias gained administrative roles. Governance reflected merit instead of tribal favoritism. Diverse communities felt represented under new rule. Mosques and religious institutions reinforced their legitimacy. Caliphs sought guidance from respected Islamic scholars. Legal reforms aligned with Sharia and ethical law. Religious endorsement made their authority widely accepted. Public ceremonies and celebrations showcased Abbasid power. Massive parades demonstrated unity and public loyalty. Citizens witnessed caliphs' moral and spiritual leadership. Propaganda emphasized equality, justice, and reform goals. Military victories reinforced political legitimacy across regions. Rebels were subdued to strengthen state authority. Abbasids proved capable of decisive and fair rule. People respected their leadership across all provinces. Historical chronicles recorded the revolution as righteous. Writings praised their vision and political wisdom. Legitimacy combined lineage, military power, and faith. Abbasids became accepted rulers by Islamic scholars. They redefined caliphate authority across vast lands. Power shifted from tribal leaders to central administration. Urban centers recognized Abbasids as supreme authority. Governance became more structured and universally respected. Abbasids maintained fairness in taxation and law. Citizens experienced protection and economic stability widely. Non-Arabs were integrated into governance seamlessly. Unity under justice strengthened the new caliphate. Religious symbolism underpinned all political actions. Friday sermons reminded people of caliphate legitimacy. Legitimacy was both spiritual and practical simultaneously. Trust in Abbasids grew stronger every year. They fostered loyalty through both reward and fairness. Merit-based appointments created efficient government systems. Communities accepted Abbasid rule without violent opposition. Inclusivity became a hallmark of their governance. Abbasids used education to strengthen legitimacy further. Scholars taught history and law under caliphate guidance. Knowledge promoted understanding and reinforced public trust. Intellectual leadership enhanced political credibility widely. The revolution ensured lasting authority over empire. Abbasids became synonymous with rightful Islamic rule. Legitimacy combined faith, lineage, and public support. Revolutionary success solidified their historical significance permanently. Abbasids opened government to non-Arab Muslims. Persians, Turks, and Berbers gained positions. Merit rather than ethnicity guided administrative roles. This strategy strengthened loyalty across the empire. Non-Arabs participated in provincial administration directly. Governors were appointed from diverse cultural backgrounds. Local communities felt represented in government decisions. Integration improved stability in far-flung regions. Military leadership included many skilled non-Arabs. Persian generals commanded troops effectively and loyally. Turkish cavalry became crucial to Abbasid campaigns. Diverse armies enhanced the caliphate's strength significantly. Cultural exchange flourished within administrative offices. Persian scholars contributed to science and governance. Non-Arab bureaucrats introduced new efficient practices. Innovation spread quickly throughout Abbasid institutions. Religious inclusion promoted broader societal acceptance. Shias and Sunnis gained advisory and judicial roles. Non-Arabs felt connected to central authority closely. Faith and governance worked hand in hand harmoniously. Economic policies benefited from diverse administrators' input. Trade routes were managed by competent non-Arabs. Agricultural reforms improved productivity across provinces. Meritocratic approach boosted empire's wealth substantially. Abbasids celebrated contributions of non-Arab officials publicly. Recognition fostered unity and discouraged rebellion quietly. Diversity became a defining feature of governance. Empire thrived under inclusive administrative practices effectively. Urban centers welcomed broader representation eagerly. Citizens experienced fair taxation and law enforcement. Administrative reforms strengthened Abbasid legitimacy everywhere. Integration reduced ethnic tensions in major cities. Education and knowledge spread through diverse officials. Persian and Arab scholars collaborated on translations. Scientific and cultural achievements flourished under cooperation. Non-Arab influence enriched intellectual life greatly. Inclusivity encouraged loyalty among distant provinces. Regions felt empowered under central caliphate leadership. Abbasids created a sense of belonging broadly. Diverse talent secured long-term political stability. The caliphate became more efficient and centralized. Meritocratic appointments reduced favoritism and corruption naturally. Non-Arabs became essential pillars of governance. Abbasid authority strengthened through this strategic inclusivity. This approach ensured long-lasting empire cohesion. Cultural diversity promoted unity without weakening power. Administrative strength now relied on ability over heritage. Inclusivity shaped the caliphate's historical success permanently. Abbasids restructured the Islamic state entirely. They divided territories into manageable administrative regions. Governors were appointed for each province carefully. Central authority controlled distant regions efficiently. New departments handled finance, law, and taxation. Treasuries monitored revenue collection systematically across provinces. Bureaucrats ensured accurate record-keeping and fairness. Economic management strengthened the empire's overall stability. Military organization was improved for better defense. Armies were stationed strategically in vulnerable areas. Commanders reported directly to the caliph's court. Coordination allowed rapid response to internal threats. Judicial reform standardized courts across the empire. Sharia law was enforced consistently and fairly. Cadis resolved disputes in cities and towns. Legal structure reinforced trust in central authority. Provincial governors gained oversight but limited autonomy. Checks and balances prevented misuse of administrative power. Officials were accountable to both caliph and citizens. Abbasid control balanced power with local needs carefully. Postal and communication networks were expanded greatly. Messages traveled faster between capitals and provinces. Efficient communication improved governance and military coordination. Trade and administration benefited from reliable information flow. Taxation systems were refined for fairness and efficiency. Land revenue was assessed with standardized measurement systems. Merchants and farmers contributed to state wealth equitably. Economic policies encouraged productivity and prosperity widely. Infrastructure projects strengthened empire's cohesion and economy. Roads, bridges, and canals connected distant regions. Cities flourished under planned urban development projects. Reorganization encouraged mobility and trade across provinces. Central bureaucracy recruited talent based on merit. Competent officials held positions regardless of background. Persians, Arabs, and Turks served the state equally. Meritocracy became a pillar of Abbasid administration. Religious authority was integrated into state organization. Mosques and scholars supported legal and moral governance. Friday sermons reinforced obedience to the caliph's rule. Spiritual legitimacy complemented administrative efficiency significantly. Record-keeping and census data improved planning decisions. Population and taxation data guided future reforms accurately. State relied on organized bureaucracy for stability. Information flow strengthened control across all regions. Abbasids implemented provincial councils for local input. Local elites advised governors and caliphal administrators. Community engagement reduced tensions and improved governance. Council recommendations influenced decisions at central level. Military, economic, and judicial reforms worked together. Empire functioned efficiently across vast diverse territories. Centralized control and local administration balanced effectively. Abbasid restructuring became model for later Islamic states. State reorganization secured Abbasid political dominance securely. Empire thrived under structured, disciplined, and fair rule. Institutions created order, prosperity, and stability broadly. Reforms ensured long-term strength and central authority. Caliph al-Mansur envisioned a new capital. He chose a site along the Tigris. Baghdad was founded in 760 CE precisely. It replaced previous temporary centers of power. The site was fertile and strategically located. Rivers provided water, trade, and transport routes. Al-Mansur aimed to unite empire administration efficiently. A permanent, centralized capital strengthened Abbasid authority. Construction began with careful urban planning principles. Engineers and architects designed grand administrative buildings. Foundations laid for markets, mosques, and houses. Workers from across the empire contributed labor. Baghdad symbolized Abbasid power and imperial prestige. The new city reflected strength, order, and ambition. It impressed both citizens and foreign envoys. Architectural innovation showcased Abbasid engineering mastery. City walls were fortified for protection securely. Moats and gates controlled access to inner areas. Security ensured stability and defense against external threats. Citizens felt safe under caliphal supervision effectively. Al-Mansur encouraged settlement by scholars and merchants. Baghdad became a hub for diverse populations rapidly. Merchants, artisans, and bureaucrats enriched city life. Urban growth was planned with economic foresight carefully. Markets were established along main trade arteries. Merchants traveled from Persia, Arabia, and beyond. Commerce thrived under stable governance and fair laws. Baghdad became a major economic powerhouse quickly. Mosques and madrasas were constructed across the city. Religious scholars taught law, theology, and ethics. Education became a central feature of the capital. Faith guided daily life and civil administration effectively. Palaces and government buildings symbolized caliphal authority. Officials managed the empire from well-organized centers. Central administration coordinated distant provinces efficiently. Baghdad unified Abbasid governance and control thoroughly. City design reflected both political and spiritual order. Al-Mansur aimed to impress and inspire citizens. Public spaces encouraged gatherings, markets, and celebrations. Urban planning combined functionality with symbolic meaning elegantly. Founding Baghdad signaled Abbasid ambition and vision. It replaced earlier power centers permanently and decisively. Caliphate demonstrated authority through monumental urban planning. Baghdad became the shining jewel of the empire. Infrastructure included roads, bridges, and irrigation networks. Transportation and communication linked in a city with suburbs. Economic integration strengthened through well-connected neighborhoods efficiently. City planning enhanced both commerce and governance broadly. Baghdad attracted scholars, poets, and intellectuals quickly. Libraries and learning centers were established across districts. Knowledge flourished in literature, astronomy, and philosophy. Education became a cornerstone of imperial prestige visibly. The city grew rapidly under Abbasid supervision carefully. Population swelled as people sought safety and opportunity. Newcomers contributed skills, culture, and trade networks. Baghdad emerged as a vibrant cosmopolitan metropolis permanently. Baghdad represented Abbasid strength, culture, and innovation. Its founding marked a pivotal historical milestone clearly. Al-Mansur's vision transformed empire administration and identity. The city became a beacon of Islamic civilization. Baghdad was situated on the Tigris River. This provided access to fertile lands efficiently. Rivers enabled transport of goods across regions. Merchants traveled easily to distant markets regularly. Trade routes connected Baghdad to Persia and Arabia. Silk, spices, and textiles flowed through city. Goods from India and China arrived frequently. Baghdad became a hub for international commerce. Routes also linked Baghdad to Mediterranean ports. Europe and North Africa traded through the capital. Cultural exchange spread along these major arteries. Ideas, knowledge, and technologies traveled with merchants. Caravan routes ensured connection to desert regions. Camels carried goods across harsh arid landscapes. Trade caravans brought prosperity to Abbasid markets. Economic activity fueled city growth rapidly and steadily. Merchants built warehouses along main trade roads. Marketplaces thrived near riverbanks and city gates. Storage of goods improved supply and demand efficiency. Baghdad became renowned for commerce and industry. The location allowed control over regional trade flows. Caliphate taxed goods moving through city effectively. Revenue from trade strengthened state administration significantly. Baghdad's prosperity depended on its strategic positioning wisely. Travelers and diplomats passed through Baghdad frequently. They brought news, culture, and political intelligence. The city became a center of global knowledge. Information spread rapidly along trade networks efficiently. Roads were maintained to facilitate economic exchange. Bridges connected riverbanks, enabling smooth transportation. Markets flourished along well-planned trade corridors. City planning supported commerce and urban life harmoniously. The Tigris allowed shipments of bulk goods easily. Ships transported grain, timber, and manufactured items. River traffic linked provinces to the imperial capital. Baghdad controlled commerce from both land and water. Strategic location encouraged settlement by skilled merchants. Wealthy traders built homes near key marketplaces. Economic power reinforced Baghdad's cultural and political influence. The city attracted artisans, bankers, and entrepreneurs swiftly. International trade brought luxury items into Baghdad. Silks, precious metals, and exotic spices arrived regularly. Cultural diversity grew through commercial interactions constantly. Merchants became influential advisors to caliphal administration. Baghdad became a meeting point for diverse peoples. Languages, religions, and customs mingled in the city. Trade networks created connections spanning continents extensively. The city thrived as a cosmopolitan economic center. Abbasids leveraged location for both commerce and politics. Taxes and tariffs strengthened imperial coffers efficiently. Strategic position ensured long-term empire stability securely. Baghdad became indispensable for regional and global trade. Merchants' wealth funded education, infrastructure, and culture. Economic prosperity supported libraries, palaces, and mosques. Trade reinforced both power and cultural prestige. The city's strategic location defined its historical success. Caliph al-Mansur designed Baghdad as circular. The round city symbolized harmony and cosmic order. Its layout reflected Abbasid vision of perfect governance. Central palace and mosque formed the city's heart. Concentric walls protected inner administrative and religious areas. Outer districts housed merchants, artisans, and residents. City gates allowed controlled access to protect citizens. Security ensured stability while maintaining urban beauty efficiently. Wide streets radiated outward from the central hub. Traffic and commerce flowed smoothly along main avenues. Markets, public squares, and gardens were well planned. Urban organization reinforced both function and symbolism effectively. Central Caliphal Palace represented political authority and power. Mosque at city's center signified spiritual guidance clearly. Government and faith worked together to inspire citizens. Architecture reflected order, hierarchy, and divine inspiration visibly. Residential areas were organized by social and economic status. Merchants and artisans lived near trading centers closely. Wealthy elites resided closer to the city center. Poorer citizens lived in outer rings of Baghdad. City walls were fortified with gates and towers. Defensive structures protected against both external and internal threats. Watchtowers allowed surveillance over surrounding lands regularly. Safety and order were key priorities for al-Mansur. Round design encouraged symmetry and aesthetic balance visually. Gardens, fountains, and public spaces enhanced urban life. Spatial planning reflected Abbasid commitment to beauty. Urban forms symbolized the harmony of political cosmos. Markets were arranged efficiently within concentric districts. Goods were distributed quickly across neighborhoods and streets. Economic activity thrived through planned commercial networks effectively. Trade and urban life flourished simultaneously under design. The round city centralized administration for quick governance. Officials could reach all districts rapidly and efficiently. Coordination between military, judiciary, and finance improved. Administrative efficiency strengthened central authority significantly. Religious ceremonies and public events were held centrally. Citizens gathered in squares for festivals and sermons. Public life reflected both civic and spiritual order. Round design emphasized unity and centralized control clearly. Gardens and water channels were integrated into planning. Urban environment balanced nature, commerce, and culture harmoniously. Public amenities enhanced citizens' daily life consistently. Design promoted prosperity and well-being throughout Baghdad. Outer walls protected suburbs and extended neighborhoods safely. Farmers and traders supplied city with essential goods. Urban and rural interaction strengthened city's economy. Defensive planning ensured long-term security and stability effectively. Round city layout influenced future Islamic urban planning. Other caliphates adopted concentric, organized city structures. Baghdad became a model of ideal imperial capital. Urban symbolism reflected Abbasid authority and cosmic order. Architectural precision showcased Abbasid engineering and vision. Art, geometry, and symbolism combined in urban design. Round city reflected both earthly and spiritual governance. Caliphate projected power and harmony through city planning. Baghdad's round city became legendary for centuries. It inspired travelers, scholars, and historians alike. Design reflected Abbasid ambition, order, and cultural sophistication. Urban planning merged practical needs with symbolic meaning. Baghdad quickly became the empire's central hub. Caliphal administration centralized government and judicial authority. Officials coordinated provinces from the capital effectively. Centralized power strengthened Abbasid political control significantly. The city housed key government ministries efficiently. Finance, military, and legal departments were organized. Bureaucracy managed taxation, trade, and provincial affairs. Well-structured governance ensured smooth empire operations consistently. Baghdad became home to scholars and intellectuals. Libraries, schools, and research centers flourished widely. Knowledge in science, philosophy, and literature thrived. Learning became a central feature of urban life. Artists, poets, and calligraphers found patronage easily. Cultural achievements reflected Abbasid sophistication and prestige. Architecture, literature, and visual arts expanded rapidly. Baghdad gained reputation as a cosmopolitan cultural center. Caliphs promoted translation of foreign texts actively. Greek, Persian, and Indian works were preserved carefully. Knowledge of mathematics, astronomy, and medicine spread. Scholarly collaboration strengthened empire's intellectual influence broadly. Markets supported both commerce and cultural exchange. Merchants from distant lands introduced diverse customs. Cultural fusion shaped cuisine, fashion, and social life. Trade fueled both wealth and cultural development efficiently. Public spaces encouraged civic and cultural gatherings. Festivals, poetry readings, and debates were common. Mosques and squares hosted educational events regularly. Citizens experienced rich social and cultural life daily. Religious scholars influenced governance and moral authority. Sharia law guided administration and judicial decisions. Faith intertwined with education and civic organization. Spiritual leadership reinforced cultural and political unity effectively. Baghdad became a hub for technological innovation. Engineers and architects improved infrastructure and urban planning. Water channels, bridges, and roads enhanced city function. Innovation supported economic growth and societal well-being efficiently. Diplomats and envoys traveled through Baghdad frequently. Foreign visitors witnessed administrative and cultural sophistication. City influenced politics, education, and culture regionally. Baghdad's prestige extended throughout the Islamic world visibly. The caliphal court sponsored poets and writers. Literature celebrated Abbasid achievements and imperial vision. Stories, histories, and philosophical works were encouraged widely. Baghdad became synonymous with knowledge and artistic excellence. Medical schools and hospitals advanced healthcare systems. Physicians studied, treated, and taught throughout the city. Scientific advancements improved citizens' quality of life steadily. Baghdad became a beacon of medical knowledge globally. Education and administration were closely interconnected in Baghdad. Students trained to serve in government and judiciary. Scholars advised caliphs on law, science, and culture. Knowledge reinforced political legitimacy and societal stability broadly. The city attracted talent from across the empire. Persians, Arabs, Turks, and others contributed actively. Cultural diversity enriched intellectual, artistic, and civic life. Baghdad's population grew rapidly due to opportunity and prestige. Libraries housed thousands of manuscripts meticulously preserved. Centers of learning attracted students from distant regions. Translation movements expanded access to ancient and foreign knowledge. Baghdad became the intellectual heart of the Abbasid Caliphate. Baghdad's prominence shaped the empire's identity profoundly. Administration, culture, and knowledge defined its imperial legacy. The city unified political, religious, and cultural life seamlessly. Baghdad symbolized the strength and sophistication of Abbasids. Baghdad grew rapidly under Abbasid leadership carefully. Populations swelled from migration and urban development. Scholars, merchants, and artisans settled in abundance. Diverse communities enriched social and cultural life. Trade and commerce fueled continuous urban expansion actively. Markets, bazaars, and caravan routes attracted travelers. Goods from Persia, India, and China arrived. Baghdad became a hub for international commerce. Infrastructure developed to support the growing population. Roads, bridges, and canals connected city districts. Water supply and sanitation systems improved urban life. Engineering advancements allowed efficient management of resources. Palaces, mosques, and madrasas expanded across districts. Architectural splendor reflected wealth, power, and sophistication. Public spaces accommodated education, religion, and social events. Urban planning balanced functionality with aesthetic appeal effectively. Cultural and intellectual life attracted scholars worldwide. Libraries, hospitals, and observatories became city landmarks. Translation movements preserved Greek, Persian, and Indian texts. Knowledge spread rapidly throughout the Islamic world efficiently. Markets became centers for cultural as well as commerce. Merchants introduced exotic goods and diverse customs. Social interactions encouraged cultural exchange and innovation. Baghdad thrived as both economic and intellectual capital. Population density required effective governance and administration. Officials ensured law, order, and fair taxation consistently. Centralized bureaucracy managed the sprawling metropolis efficiently. Administrative reforms supported long-term urban stability successfully. Religious life flourished alongside academic and civic pursuits. Mosques, scholars, and legal institutions guided the populace. Faith reinforced social cohesion and moral governance clearly. Baghdad balanced spiritual and secular authority effectively. City attracted talent from across the Islamic world. Poets, physicians, mathematicians, and philosophers migrated freely. Cultural diversity created vibrant, cosmopolitan urban society. Baghdad became a symbol of cosmopolitan excellence globally. Urban expansion included suburbs, gardens, and trade districts. Infrastructure supported both rural connections and city needs. Integration of commerce, administration, and residential zones thrived. Baghdad's layout reflected Abbasid ambition and strategic planning. The city's size amazed travelers and foreign envoys. Baghdad became the largest city in the world. Its influence reached beyond the Islamic Empire widely. Population, commerce, and knowledge defined global prominence steadily. Public festivals, religious events, and marketplaces drew crowds. Cultural gatherings celebrated arts, learning, and community life. Baghdad symbolized prosperity, power, and cosmopolitan unity. Urban vibrancy attracted more residents and foreign visitors. Education and scholarship continued to fuel city growth. Universities and madrasas educated generations of civil servants. Scientific and literary achievements spread far beyond Baghdad. Knowledge became the city's most valuable export consistently. The Abbasid Caliphate leveraged Baghdad's size strategically. Trade, taxation, and administration were centralized effectively. Large population enabled efficient recruitment and cultural dissemination. Urban prominence reinforced political and economic power reliably. Baghdad remained a cultural, economic, and intellectual center. Its growth set standards for future metropolitan cities. Abbasid vision created an unparalleled urban masterpiece permanently. The city's legacy endured through centuries of history. Caliph Harun al-Rashid envisioned a center of knowledge. The House of Wisdom was founded in Baghdad. Scholars gathered there to study and translate texts. It became a symbol of Abbasid intellectual ambition. The library housed manuscripts from across the empire. Greek, Persian, and Indian texts were carefully preserved. Students and scholars studied philosophy, science, and medicine. Knowledge flowed freely in this grand intellectual hub. Research in mathematics and astronomy flourished rapidly. Observatories were established to study stars and planets. Calculations and theories guided navigation and timekeeping precisely. Baghdad became a center for practical and theoretical knowledge. Translation efforts brought foreign wisdom into Arabic. Greek works of Aristotle, Plato, and Ptolemy were studied. Persian texts enriched mathematics, medicine, and astrology. Indian contributions enhanced numerals and astronomical calculations accurately. Scholars collaborated to expand understanding of the universe. Debates and discussions were held daily within the city. Ideas spread across continents through intellectual networks efficiently. Baghdad became a beacon of learning throughout the Islamic world. The House of Wisdom employed expert translators and copyists. Manuscripts were meticulously copied and preserved for future generations. Knowledge was organized, catalogued, and made accessible carefully. Scholars documented discoveries systematically for widespread use. Philosophy and theology were central areas of study. Scholars explored ethics, logic, and metaphysical questions. Debates shaped Islamic philosophy and influenced legal systems. Critical thinking and reasoning were highly encouraged consistently. The institution welcomed scholars from diverse cultural backgrounds. Persians, Arabs, Greeks, and Indians collaborated extensively. Cultural exchange enriched science, philosophy, and literature greatly. Knowledge transcended borders, languages, and ethnic divisions successfully. Scientific instruments were developed and refined in Baghdad. Astrolabes, sundials, and navigational tools guided exploration accurately. Experiments and observations expanded practical understanding systematically. Innovation thrived under Abbasid patronage and guidance steadily. Education in the House of Wisdom was rigorous. Students mastered multiple languages, including Greek and Sanskrit. They learned mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and philosophy extensively. Curriculum emphasized both theoretical and applied knowledge consistently. Scholars translated and preserved ancient texts meticulously. Greek mathematics influenced algebra, geometry, and arithmetic developments. Persian medical texts improved hospitals and patient care. Indian astronomy introduced precise calculations and celestial models effectively. The House of Wisdom promoted collaboration and mentorship widely. Senior scholars guided younger students through research and study. Apprentices gained practical experience in observation and calculation. Knowledge was passed systematically to future generations reliably. Baghdad's intellectual capital attracted visitors from distant lands. Ambassadors and scholars traveled to learn and collaborate actively. Knowledge spread back to Europe, Africa, and Asia gradually. The House of Wisdom became a global educational center. Patronage of caliphs ensured continued growth and stability. Funds supported translation, research, and preservation projects effectively. Scholarship became a prestigious and valued pursuit consistently. Baghdad gained fame as a center of wisdom permanently. The House of Wisdom influenced global knowledge for centuries. Ideas developed there shaped mathematics, astronomy, and medicine. Baghdad's intellectual legacy endured long after Abbasid rule. Scholars' discoveries continued inspiring civilizations worldwide continuously. Baghdad became the hub for scholarly translation. Greek, Persian, and Indian texts were collected carefully. Manuscripts were brought from far-reaching regions. Knowledge flowed into Arabic, reaching scholars everywhere. Caliphs supported translation as a state priority. Scholars worked tirelessly to render texts accurately. Philosophy, mathematics, astronomy, and medicine were preserved. Translations ensured knowledge survived beyond its original culture. Greek texts of Aristotle shaped Islamic philosophy widely. Ptolemy's astronomical works guided precise celestial calculations. Hippocrates' medical writings informed hospitals and treatment practices. Logical reasoning and ethics entered the Islamic intellectual tradition. Persian works enriched mathematics and scientific inquiry profoundly. Algebra and geometry benefited from preserved Persian contributions. Astrology and medicine drew heavily from Persian knowledge. Scientific methodology improved through careful study of texts. Indian manuscripts introduced numerals and calculation techniques. Decimal system and zero transformed mathematics across regions. Astronomical data helped predict eclipses and planetary movements. Mathematical concepts spread to Europe centuries later efficiently. Translation required mastery of multiple languages and scripts. Scholars learned Greek, Syriac, Sanskrit, and Pahlavi diligently. Cross-cultural knowledge exchange advanced both science and philosophy. Collaboration strengthened intellectual networks throughout Baghdad permanently. Copyists meticulously reproduced manuscripts for libraries and scholars. Errors were corrected through careful review and study. Texts became accessible to students and researchers systematically. Preservation ensured knowledge continuity across generations reliably. The movement encouraged critical thinking and debates regularly. Scholars compared texts, analyzed ideas, and drew conclusions. Interpretation and commentary advanced understanding across disciplines. Islamic thought absorbed and expanded on ancient knowledge significantly. Centers of learning and libraries distributed translated works widely. Students traveled to Baghdad to access manuscripts personally. Ideas spread to cities across the Abbasid Empire efficiently. Knowledge became both practical and philosophical for society. Translation impacted medicine, engineering, and technological advancements directly. Hospitals applied medical texts for patient treatment carefully. Engineers used calculations for infrastructure and irrigation projects. Scientific progress accelerated due to accessible translated knowledge consist. Philosophy and theology were enriched through foreign texts. Debates over ethics, metaphysics, and law evolved greatly. Scholarly discussions merged ancient wisdom with Islamic teachings. Intellectual life flourished under the Abbasid patronage steadily. Translations preserved works that might have been lost. Ancient Greek, Persian, and Indian knowledge survived centuries. Baghdad became a repository of human intellectual heritage. Legacy influenced both Islamic and European civilizations profoundly. Scholars' work laid foundations for algebra and astronomy. Observatories and laboratories relied on translated classical texts. Practical innovations emerged from careful study and experimentation. Knowledge moved from theoretical learning to applied science widely. Translation movement strengthened Baghdad's reputation as intellectual capital. Scholars and students flocked to learn in the city. Ideas traveled back to Europe during later centuries. Baghdad's preservation of texts shaped global scientific history. Patronage of translation reflected Abbasid commitment to knowledge. Caliphs funded scholars, copyists, and libraries consistently. Intellectual and cultural flourishing became a hallmark of empire. Translation movement ensured Baghdad's legacy endured permanently. Mathematics flourished in Baghdad under Abbasid support. Algebra, arithmetic, and geometry advanced significantly. Scholars solved complex equations with new techniques. Mathematical knowledge spread throughout the Islamic world. Al-Khwarizmi developed algebraic methods systematically and clearly. His work introduced algorithms and calculation principles. Mathematics became both practical and theoretical for society. Students studied arithmetic, geometry, and algebra in depth. Astronomy benefited from precise observations and instruments. Astrolabes, armillary spheres, and celestial charts were created. Astronomers mapped stars, planets, and lunar cycles. Baghdad became a center for astronomical innovation widely. Calendars were refined for religious and agricultural purposes. Timing of prayers and festivals relied on accurate calculations. Agriculture and navigation improved through celestial observations. Science and daily life were interconnected in Baghdad effectively. Hospitals advanced medicine and healthcare under Abbasid guidance. Physicians studied Greek, Persian, and Indian medical texts. Treatments were systematic, combining theory and practical knowledge. Medical education became highly organized and widely respected. Surgery and pharmacology progressed with precise techniques. Physicians documented procedures and remedies meticulously for students. Hospitals offered treatment and learning opportunities simultaneously. Medical knowledge saved lives and trained new practitioners efficiently. Mathematics supported engineering, architecture, and economic planning. Calculations guided construction of canals, bridges, and mosques. Trade and taxation benefited from accurate numerical systems. Practical application reinforced theoretical advancements significantly. Astronomers calculated eclipses, planetary motion, and solar events. Observatories allowed long-term data collection for research. Instruments improved precision in observation and measurement steadily. Scientific methodology emphasized evidence, calculation, and experimentation. Scholars collaborated across disciplines to enhance understanding. Medicine, astronomy, and mathematics informed each other mutually. Interdisciplinary work expanded knowledge and practical applications. Baghdad became a hub for integrated scientific advancement. Medical texts were translated and studied extensively. Greek works of Galen and Hippocrates informed treatments. Indian and Persian texts added herbal and surgical knowledge. Hospitals became centers of research and applied medicine. Astronomical tables guided navigation and timekeeping accurately. Trade routes relied on celestial calculations for safe travel. Calendars synchronized religious events with precision. Science directly improved everyday life and commerce. Abbasid patronage supported experiments and innovation consistently. Caliphs encouraged scholars to pursue research freely. Institutions like the House of Wisdom facilitated discoveries. Knowledge became central to political and cultural identity. Mathematics enabled development of trigonometry and algebraic methods. Astronomy refined maps and celestial observation techniques. Medicine improved diagnostic and treatment procedures widely. Baghdad became the epicenter of global scientific advancement. Scholars trained generations of mathematicians, physicians, and astronomers. Education spread knowledge throughout the empire and beyond. Baghdad produced world-renowned experts in multiple scientific fields. Intellectual legacy shaped later Islamic and European science. Scientific achievements reflected Abbasid commitment to learning. Innovation was supported through funding, collaboration, and scholarship. Knowledge became a source of cultural and political prestige. Baghdad symbolized the peak of the Golden Age. Al-Khwarizmi was a leading Abbasid mathematician. He worked at Baghdad's House of Wisdom extensively. His algebraic methods transformed mathematics worldwide permanently. Students studied his work across the Islamic world. He introduced systematic solutions to linear and quadratic equations. His books explained calculation methods clearly and practically. Al-Khwarizmi's algorithms influenced later European mathematicians deeply. His work laid foundations for modern mathematics globally. Astronomy benefited from contributions of scholars like him. They calculated planetary motion and predicted celestial events. Instruments and tables guided navigation and observation accurately. Abbasid scientific research expanded knowledge of the universe. Al-Khwarizmi's work combined Greek, Indian, and Persian knowledge. He synthesized ideas into coherent mathematical frameworks efficiently. Cultural exchange strengthened scientific understanding across regions. Innovation flourished under the Abbasid intellectual climate successfully. His treatises were translated into Latin in Europe later. European scholars adopted Arabic numerals and algebraic methods. Mathematics evolved rapidly due to Baghdad's scholarly influence. Knowledge traveled across continents, shaping global science permanently. He also contributed to geography and cartography effectively. Maps were drawn using astronomical and mathematical calculations. Scholars measured distances and coordinates for accurate navigation. Baghdad became the center of mathematical and geographic learning. Other scholars followed his example in astronomy and medicine. Knowledge was recorded systematically for teaching and research. Schools and libraries ensured discoveries were preserved carefully. Intellectual culture emphasized both innovation and preservation simultaneously. Al-Khwarizmi influenced engineering, architecture, and urban planning directly. Calculations guided construction projects, bridges, and water systems. Mathematical principles were applied to infrastructure and governance efficiently. Practical applications reinforced theoretical scientific advancement. Baghdad attracted talent from across the Islamic Empire. Scholars competed and collaborated to produce significant innovations. Academics became advisors to caliphs and administrators actively. Knowledge shaped policy and practical solutions to empire challenges. His methods inspired later European Renaissance mathematicians significantly. Algebra, algorithms, and calculation techniques were widely adopted. Europe benefited from Baghdad's scientific advancements centuries later. Scholars' work transcended borders and cultural boundaries permanently. Education and mentorship extended his influence throughout generations. Students learned mathematics, astronomy, and applied sciences thoroughly. Baghdad trained intellectual leaders who spread knowledge widely. Al-Khwarizmi's legacy became central to global scientific development. His innovations bridged theory and real-world applications effectively. Scientific observation, calculation, and experimentation advanced simultaneously. Abbasid scholarship emphasized both understanding and practical use. Knowledge shaped governance, trade, and daily life efficiently. Al-Khwarizmi exemplified Abbasid commitment to intellectual excellence. Caliphs supported research, translation, and preservation generously. Scholars' contributions reinforced Baghdad as the world's knowledge capital. His work ensured lasting global influence on science permanently. Baghdad produced mathematicians, astronomers, and scientists of renown. Their collective achievements advanced multiple fields simultaneously. Golden Age science inspired future civilizations and discoveries. Al-Khwarizmi's name became synonymous with innovation and wisdom. Baghdad became the center of global learning. Scholars, students, and travelers arrived from everywhere. The city attracted talent across diverse cultural backgrounds. Knowledge flowed freely through libraries and schools continuously. House of Wisdom symbolized intellectual and scholarly authority. Manuscripts from Greece, Persia, and India were preserved. Translation and research connected civilizations across continents efficiently. Baghdad became the intellectual capital of the Abbasids. Libraries held thousands of scientific, philosophical, and literary works. Students studied mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and philosophy intensely. Education emphasized both theory and practical applications consistently. Scholarship flourished under caliphal patronage and supervision actively. Astronomers observed stars and planets meticulously every night. Calendars and celestial tables guided navigation and agriculture. Mathematics and astronomy were integrated with daily life efficiently. Scientific instruments improved precision and understanding systematically. Physicians studied, treated, and documented patients' conditions carefully. Hospitals served both as learning centers and healthcare providers. Medical advancements benefited society and trained future physicians. Baghdad became a center of medical knowledge globally. Philosophers debated ethics, metaphysics, and religious law regularly. Ideas from Greek, Persian, and Indian traditions merged. Intellectual life encouraged critical thinking and innovation widely. Baghdad's scholarly environment inspired generations of students permanently. Merchants and artisans contributed to intellectual and cultural exchange. Trade brought diverse ideas, technologies, and knowledge into city. Economic prosperity supported libraries, schools, and scholars effectively. Baghdad thrived as both economic and intellectual capital. Education was linked with administration and civil service training. Scholars advised caliphs and helped manage the empire efficiently. Knowledge informed governance, law, and social organization consistently. Baghdad integrated intellectual and political power seamlessly. Scholars collaborated across fields to advance understanding collectively. Mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and philosophy were interconnected actively. Cross-disciplinary study strengthened practical and theoretical knowledge simultaneously. Baghdad became a hub of interdisciplinary scientific in. Ambassadors and visitors traveled to learn and exchange ideas. Knowledge spread back to Europe, Africa, and Asia gradually. Baghdad influenced intellectual development far beyond its borders. The city became a model for global scholarship universally. Patronage of caliphs ensured funding and protection for scholars. Research, translation, and preservation were supported consistently. Institutions became centers of both learning and innovation. Baghdad maintained intellectual leadership across centuries reliably. Libraries, observatories, and schools enriched public life consistently. Students and scholars studied, debated, and recorded discoveries. Cultural and scientific knowledge flourished under Abbasid leadership. Baghdad became synonymous with intellectual and academic excellence. Translation movement preserved ancient knowledge for future generations. Greek, Persian, and Indian works were studied widely. Baghdad ensured that critical knowledge survived and spread globally. Intellectual continuity became a defining feature of the city. Mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and philosophy flourished simultaneously. Scholars created practical applications for theoretical discoveries. Baghdad's innovations influenced global science and learning for centuries. The city became a beacon of human intellect permanently. Education, research, and scholarship defined Baghdad's reputation. Students traveled from far regions to learn actively. Knowledge was disseminated, preserved, and expanded consistently. Baghdad remained the world's intellectual capital indefinitely. Baghdad's legacy influenced Islamic and European civilizations profoundly. Scientific methods, discoveries, and ideas spread through trade and scholarship. The city shaped global understanding across multiple disciplines. Baghdad became a symbol of Golden Age brilliance permanently. Abbasids replaced tribal governance with central administration. Caliphs established a bureaucracy to manage empire affairs. Officials were appointed based on merit and skill. Central authority now controlled provinces and distant regions. Tribal leaders lost independent governing powers gradually. Their loyalty was redirected to the caliph directly. Centralized rule reduced conflicts between rival clans effectively. Governance became more consistent across the empire steadily. The bureaucracy coordinated military, taxation, and law efficiently. Officials reported regularly to the central caliphal administration. Information flowed through structured offices to decision-makers. Empire-wide policies were implemented uniformly across provinces. Administrative divisions replaced tribal territories systematically. Provinces were managed by governors loyal to the caliph. Regional officials ensured collection of taxes and resources. Central control strengthened Abbasid political stability permanently. Meritocracy replaced hereditary positions in administration actively. Skilled administrators were chosen regardless of ethnic background. Persians, Arabs, and Turks served in bureaucratic roles. Talent, not lineage, determined influence within the empire. Central records documented population, taxation, and commerce regularly. Data guided planning, resource allocation, and policy decisions. State relied on accurate record keeping for governance. Bureaucracy enhanced administrative efficiency across vast territories consistently. Tribal customs were integrated carefully into imperial law. Local traditions informed civil administration without weakening authority. Governors mediated disputes while maintaining centralized power. Bureaucracy balanced local culture with empire-wide governance effectively. Appointments were monitored to prevent corruption and abuse. Officials were accountable to both caliph and central oversight. Checks and balances improved trust in government broadly. Central authority strengthened legitimacy and reduced internal unrest. Communication networks connected provinces to the capital efficiently. Messages, decrees, and orders traveled quickly along roads. Centralized administration facilitated coordination of military campaigns. Information flow ensured rapid response to challenges consistently. Training programs educated administrators in law and finance. Scholars learned Arabic, Persian, and administrative practices thoroughly. Bureaucracy developed standardized methods for governance and record keeping. Professionalism strengthened Abbasid authority and efficiency permanently. The centralized system absorbed conquered regions effectively. Newly annexed territories were integrated into imperial administration. Governors implemented policies to maintain stability and loyalty. Empire expanded without weakening administrative control successfully. Central authority coordinated taxation and resource distribution uniformly. Wealth was collected and redistributed for infrastructure and defense. Financial stability supported long-term political and military power. Bureaucracy ensured predictable and equitable management across provinces. Caliphs relied on bureaucracy for policy and decision-making. Viziers and secretaries executed daily administration efficiently. Centralized planning allowed consistent empire-wide strategic initiatives. Bureaucracy became the backbone of Abbasid governance permanently. The shift reduced tribal rivalries and strengthened unity. Central control encouraged loyalty to the caliphate broadly. Empire operated smoothly under coordinated administrative systems. Stability allowed cultural, economic, and intellectual growth simultaneously. Viziers served as the caliph's chief administrators. They oversaw daily government functions across the empire. Decisions on finance, law, and military passed through them. Their role ensured efficient and consistent imperial governance. Viziers acted as intermediaries between provinces and capital. They coordinated governors, officials, and military commanders effectively. Information flowed through their offices to the caliph directly. Central authority was reinforced through their administrative oversight. Appointments of viziers were based on skill and loyalty. Highly competent individuals managed critical aspects of governance. Persian and Arab scholars often served as viziers. Meritocratic selection strengthened the bureaucracy and administration permanently. Viziers supervised tax collection and financial management efficiently. They ensured funds reached the treasury from provinces systematically. Economic stability depended heavily on their careful oversight. Abbasid governance relied on their expert administrative skills. They advised the caliph on political and strategic matters. Military campaigns and provincial appointments were guided through them. Decisions reflected both local needs and central policies consistently. Viziers balanced power and governance across the empire successfully. Judicial and legal matters were coordinated by viziers. Courts implemented caliphal directives through their supervision carefully. Disputes were resolved according to Islamic law uniformly. Legal consistency reinforced Abbasid authority throughout the territories. Viziers managed correspondence with foreign envoys and leaders. Diplomatic messages were delivered efficiently across regions. Foreign relations relied on their precise administration and counsel. They represented the caliphate in political and cultural exchanges. Public works and infrastructure projects were organized by viziers. Roads, canals, and bridges improved trade and communication. Urban planning depended on their careful coordination actively. Administrative planning strengthened both economy and society simultaneously. Viziers maintained records of population, resources, and commerce. Centralized documentation allowed better policy making and taxation. Accurate records reduced corruption and increased governance efficiency. Bureaucracy relied on their meticulous attention to detail consistently. They supervised military logistics and supply chains effectively. Armies received provisions, weapons, and support through their offices. Campaigns were coordinated with provincial governors and commanders. Strategic initiatives depended on their organizational expertise reliably. Viziers trained and mentored junior officials and secretaries. Knowledge and administrative skills were passed to successors systematically. Professional bureaucracy ensured continuity and effective governance. Empire maintained smooth operations across generations permanently. Some viziers became cultural patrons, supporting scholars actively. Libraries, schools, and institutions benefited from their guidance. They encouraged intellectual and artistic achievements widely. Culture and administration were intertwined under their supervision efficiently. Caliphs relied on viziers for advice and decision-making. Daily governance, long-term planning, and crisis management were coordinated. Their influence strengthened both central authority and state stability. Viziers became indispensable to Abbasid administration and governance permanently. The role of viziers evolved with empire's needs. They adapted to challenges in politics, economy, and society. Flexibility and skill allowed the bureaucracy to endure centuries. Abbasid governance remained effective through capable vizier leadership consistently. Persian officials brought centuries of administrative experience. Their expertise strengthened Abbasid central governance significantly. Persian bureaucracy influenced law, taxation, and military organization. Abbasids integrated Persian methods into empire-wide administration. Persian techniques improved record-keeping and financial management. Accurate registers documented population, revenue, and resources systematically. Data guided policy making and taxation efficiently. Central authority grew stronger under structured administration permanently. Provinces were governed using Persian organizational models. Governors implemented policies reflecting both local and imperial needs. Provincial stability depended on effective Persian administrative strategies. Empire-wide control became more consistent and reliable continuously. Persian scholars advised caliphs on governance and diplomacy. Their knowledge of taxation and law influenced policy decisions. Abbasids relied on Persian insight for administrative reforms. Integration improved both efficiency and legitimacy of caliphate. Military administration incorporated Persian organizational methods carefully. Supply chains, troop movements, and logistics were managed systematically. Campaigns benefited from precise planning and resource allocation. Persian influence enhanced military efficiency across the empire effectively. Taxation systems were standardized using Persian practices. Revenue collection became consistent across provinces and regions. Central treasury strengthened under organized Persian-inspired management. Economic stability supported political and military expansion steadily. Persian officials introduced structured legal administration. Courts applied Islamic law with systematic oversight and procedure. Justice was more uniform and predictable under Abbasid rule. Legal consistency reinforced central authority throughout the empire reliably. Training of bureaucrats included Persian administrative techniques extensively. Officials learned record-keeping, accounting, and governance methods carefully. Professionalism became a hallmark of Abbasid bureaucracy permanently. Persian influence ensured a competent and stable administration content. Communication networks were strengthened with Persian organizational skills. Letters, decrees, and reports traveled efficiently to the capital. Central and provincial coordination improved under Persian systems. Information flow allowed rapid response to political and military challenges. Persian influence fostered cultural and intellectual exchange actively. Scholar administrators contributed knowledge of governance, science, and philosophy. Integration of Persian expertise enhanced intellectual and practical life. Baghdad benefited from both administrative and cultural contribution. Local governance blended Persian models with Islamic principles effectively. Regional leaders implemented imperial policies while respecting traditions. Stability increased as citizens experienced both justice and order. Abbasid rule became widely accepted across diverse populations reliably. Persian administrative legacy continued for centuries beyond Abbasid era. Techniques influenced later Islamic empires and governance structures. Methods ensured durability and adaptability of centralized state control. Baghdad remained a model of efficient imperial administration permanently. Integration of Persian expertise created a merit-based bureaucracy. Competence, loyalty, and skill determined administrative positions consistently. Tribal power diminished as bureaucratic professionalism expanded. Centralized authority was strengthened across the empire efficiently. Persian-trained administrators ensured proper functioning of all departments. Finance, justice, and military coordination improved significantly. Empire-wide stability relied on skilled bureaucratic management reliably. State control became both effective and sustainable permanently. Caliphs recognized the value of Persian administrative experience. Their guidance shaped policies and institutional reforms actively. Abbasid bureaucracy became a sophisticated, organized, and effective system. Persian influence underpinned the empire's long-term success consistently. Abbasids implemented structured taxation to fund governance. Revenue supported administration, military, and public infrastructure effectively. Accurate records ensured fair collection across provinces consistently. Taxation became a pillar of imperial stability permanently. Provincial governors supervised local tax collection carefully. Officials documented income from agriculture, trade, and property. Standardized procedures prevented corruption and misuse efficiently. Empire-wide accountability strengthened trust in government broadly. Land taxes were calculated based on crop yields. Farmers contributed according to productive capacity and land size. Agricultural revenue funded urban administration and army maintenance. Economic resources were distributed fairly across the empire systematically. Trade taxes contributed to wealth in major cities. Merchants paid duties on goods transported along routes. Markets thrived while supporting central treasury efficiently. Commerce and taxation worked together to maintain prosperity consistently. Non-Muslim subjects paid the jizya tax systematically. Religious obligations and rights were clearly codified legally. Tax revenue balanced governance and social stability reliably. Abbasid administration integrated law and taxation effectively. State officials audited accounts to ensure accuracy carefully. Reports were submitted regularly to central authorities directly. Mismanagement was corrected quickly to maintain efficiency. Empire-wide administration relied on oversight and accountability consistently. Taxation funded infrastructure like roads, canals, and bridges. Urban centers expanded, and trade routes improved dramatically. Economic stability supported military campaigns and public projects. Abbasid states maintained prosperity through organized fiscal policy. Zakat, a religious tax, supported social welfare systematically. Funds helped the poor, orphans, and travelers in need. Social obligations strengthened community cohesion and loyalty. Public welfare was tied directly to state taxation efficiently. Professional bureaucrats managed collection and distribution effectively. They recorded income, expenses, and local resources carefully. Centralized oversight ensured uniformity and fairness across provinces. Reliable administration promoted long-term empire-wide stability continuously. Caliphs adjusted taxation to respond to crises quickly. Droughts, famines, and military needs were considered carefully. Flexible fiscal policy maintained confidence in imperial governance. Taxes balanced revenue and public tolerance strategically. Land surveyors measured plots accurately for proper assessment. Cadastral records documented ownership and productivity precisely. Information guided governors in fair taxation consistently. Structured administration ensured stability across diverse regions permanently. Merchants and artisans contributed through taxes on goods. Urban wealth supported education, culture, and intellectual institutions. Economic contribution reinforced both empire and society mutually. Baghdad thrived as both financial and cultural capital efficiently. Tax systems strengthened loyalty among provinces and cities. Officials ensured predictable governance and equitable obligations. Clear rules reduced rebellion and resistance effectively. Empire-wide cohesion grew under structured fiscal policy reliably. Long-term fiscal planning funded military and cultural projects. Army provisioning, libraries, and observatories relied on taxation. Knowledge, infrastructure, and security were supported systematically. Economic management enhanced Abbasid authority across the empire permanently. Taxation combined Islamic principles with practical administration. Religious and secular obligations worked together efficiently. Abbasids maintained social order while funding governance consistently. Fiscal policy became a cornerstone of empire-wide control. Caliphs relied on taxation to sustain state power. Efficient collection and distribution ensured empire's long-term stability. Governance, military, and public services depended on revenue. Abbasid prosperity reflected careful management of taxation systems. Abbasid law was firmly based on Sharia. Religious scholars guided governance and legal interpretation consistently. Courts applied Islamic jurisprudence across the empire systematically. Justice reflected both divine principles and practical needs. Qadis presided over local courts with authority. They interpreted law and adjudicated civil disputes. Decisions balanced Islamic principles with local customs carefully. Courts ensured fairness, order, and societal stability effectively. Legal texts were compiled and preserved meticulously. Foundations included Quran, Hadith, and scholarly opinions. Judges referenced authoritative sources for consistent rulings. Islamic jurisprudence guided governance and daily life reliably. Criminal law enforced penalties according to religious guidance. Theft, assault, and corruption were punished proportionately. Public order was maintained through structured legal processes. Law upheld morality, security, and social cohesion consistently. Civil law regulated contracts, property, and family matters. Marriage, inheritance, and trade were subject to jurisprudence. Courts ensured disputes were resolved equitably and clearly. Legal structures integrated faith with societal governance effectively. Caliphs relied on scholars to advise on law. Legal opinion influenced policy, taxation, and administration directly. Consultation ensured alignment between state actions and Islamic law. Religion and governance were closely intertwined under Abbasids permanently. Sharia courts coexisted with administrative authority efficiently. Qadis reported to governors while maintaining judicial independence. Local needs were addressed without undermining central legal principles. System balanced consistency with flexibility across the empire consistently. Legal schools developed doctrines and interpretive methods widely. Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi, and Hanbali schools guided jurisprudence. Scholarly debate refined interpretation and application of law. Islamic law became a dynamic, evolving legal framework. Religious scholars taught law to administrators and judges. Education emphasized both theoretical and applied jurisprudence systematically. Officials understood legal frameworks guiding governance and public policy. Knowledge dissemination reinforced consistent application of Islamic law reliably. Appeals and oversight maintained fairness in the judicial system. Higher courts reviewed decisions to prevent errors and abuse. Checks and balances strengthened public trust in governance. Legal hierarchy ensured consistency and accountability across provinces permanently. Islamic law influenced taxation, trade, and property regulation. Contracts, commercial agreements, and land ownership followed jurisprudence. Economic and civil stability depended on structured legal enforcement. Sharia integrated societal and fiscal governance effectively across the empire. Religious morality informed both public and private conduct. Ethical principles guided rulers, officials, and citizens daily. Faith-based law reinforced social cohesion and political legitimacy. Legal structures reflected both spiritual and practical governance seamlessly. Judges preserved and recorded precedents for guidance. Decisions were referenced in similar cases to maintain consistency. Legal documentation enhanced knowledge and ensured rule of law. Abbasid administration relied on precedent for stability and fairness. Criminal, civil, and commercial law maintained societal order. Uniform application reduced disputes and strengthened imperial authority. Legal integration supported empire-wide governance and social stability. Sharia became the backbone of Abbasid political legitimacy permanently. Islamic jurisprudence influenced future Islamic empires profoundly. Legal systems mirrored Abbasid models in administration and justice. Baghdad became a center for a study of law widely. Abbasid legal legacy shaped Islamic governance across centuries. Abbasid Empire controlled vital trade routes extensively. Caravan paths connected Baghdad with Asia, Africa, Europe. Goods, ideas, and culture traveled along these networks. Trade facilitated wealth, knowledge, and political influence continuously. Silk from China reached Abbasid markets efficiently. Spices from India enriched food and medicine practices. Gold and silver coins circulated through commerce widely. Baghdad became a hub of global economic exchange. Merchants traveled with caravans across deserts and mountains. Caravans transported silk, spices, ivory, and gemstones securely. Markets in Baghdad received goods from distant lands. Trade networks spurred economic growth throughout the empire consistently. Sea routes complemented overland trade for a faster shipment. Ports on the Persian Gulf connected ships with markets. Maritime trade transported bulk goods across long distances. Baghdad profited from both land and sea commerce reliably. Trade stimulated urban growth in cities and towns. Caravanserais and inns supported travelers along trade routes. Infrastructure developed to accommodate merchants and their goods. Cities thrived from commercial activity and exchange permanently. Merchants introduced new technologies and cultural ideas actively. Glass, textiles, and ceramics traveled alongside spices and metals. Knowledge of navigation, weights, and measures spread globally. Economic exchange became intertwined with intellectual and cultural growth. Markets facilitated both local and international trade efficiently. Bartering and currency exchange allowed flexible economic transactions. Wealth circulated among traders, artisans, and bureaucrats steadily. Baghdad's economy grew stronger with every trade connection. Abbasid rulers promoted trade to strengthen political power. Secure roads, taxation systems, and law protected commerce effectively. Diplomatic relations ensured safe passage across territories consistently. Empire maintained economic stability through organized trade networks. Trade routes linked Islamic lands with Europe significantly. Italian city-states and Mediterranean ports received Abbasid goods. Europeans learned of spices, silk, and scientific knowledge. Baghdad influenced global commerce and intellectual exchange permanently. Caravans faced dangers from bandits and harsh environments. Guards and military escorts ensured safety of valuable cargo. Trade required coordination between merchants and state authorities. Abbasids maintained routes to maximize revenue and security efficiently. Goods were categorized, taxed, and transported systematically across empire. Customs offices and market inspectors regulated trade fairly. Efficient administration ensured smooth operation of commerce. Empire-wide coordination enhanced trust and reliability among traders. Trade encouraged cultural diversity in urban centers actively. Merchants from Africa, Persia, India, and Europe settled. Languages, customs, and ideas mingled in bustling markets. Baghdad became a cosmopolitan center of economic and social life. Caravan hubs connected remote regions to imperial markets. Agricultural and craft products reached major trade centers reliably. Exchange networks linked provincial economies to central authority. Economic integration strengthened Abbasid control over distant regions permanently. Seasonal trade routes adapted to climate and geography carefully. Merchants planned journeys around floods, sandstorms, and heat. Knowledge of terrain and weather improved efficiency of commerce. Experience ensured minimal losses during long-distance trading expeditions consistently. Abbasid trade extended influence into Africa, India, and Europe. Economic networks connected empires and facilitated cross-cultural interactions. Baghdad became a central node in the global economy. Trade contributed to wealth, power, and intellectual flourishing steadily. Wealth generated from trade funded infrastructure, administration, and culture. Markets, mosques, and libraries were supported through commerce. Economic prosperity reinforced political stability and urban development. Baghdad's position as a trade hub defined Abbasid success permanently. Abbasids standardized coinage for empire-wide transactions. Gold dinars and silver dirhams circulated consistently. Merchants relied on coins for trade and commerce. Uniform currency strengthened economic stability and trust permanently. Coinage facilitated trade across long distances efficiently. Currencies from Baghdad were accepted in distant regions. Merchants could exchange goods without bartering constantly. Economic transactions became faster and more reliable systematically. Banking innovations emerged to support commercial activity actively. Money changers and early banks provided credit and loans. Letters of credit allowed merchants to travel safely. Trade expanded through financial mechanisms across continents efficiently. Checks and promissory notes simplified transactions across cities. Funds could be transferred without physically moving coins. Merchants and administrators managed wealth with greater security. Financial innovation increased efficiency and reduced risk consistently. States supervised coin minting to prevent fraud effectively. Coins bore inscriptions ensuring authenticity and standard weight. Forgery was punishable under Abbasid law strictly. Confidence in currency encouraged domestic and international trade reliably. Banks supported large-scale trade ventures across the empire. Merchants financed caravans and shipping through credit systems. Investment encouraged production, markets, and economic growth steadily. Capital circulated efficiently under organized financial networks permanently. Coinage enabled taxation and tribute collection effectively. Standard money simplified revenue reporting and treasury management. Officials recorded receipts and disbursements accurately across provinces. Financial administration strengthened central control and stability continuously. Letters of credit reduced need to carry precious metals. Merchants traveled safely without transporting large amounts. Transactions became more flexible and secure for commerce. Banking innovation supported expansion of trade and markets reliably. State officials oversaw minting, banking, and trade regulations. Central control ensured integrity of financial systems consistently. Abbasid economy relied on both currency and credit mechanisms. Administration maintained stability through structured economic oversight permanently. Trade across the Mediterranean, Africa, and Asia flourished. Coins and banking facilitated long-distance commerce efficiently. Merchants prospered, and cities grew from economic expansion. Baghdad's financial system underpinned wealth and influence widely. Coins reflected Abbasid cultural and political identity visibly. Inscriptions highlighted caliphs' authority and empire-wide legitimacy. Currency reinforced central power and symbolic unity effectively. Money served both practical and ideological purposes simultaneously. Banking encouraged entrepreneurship and investment throughout the empire. Loans financed production, markets, and urban development actively. Merchants expanded trade networks using credit and finance. Economic growth strengthened political authority and social cohesion steadily. Financial innovation allowed Abbasids to fund armies efficiently. Military campaigns relied on stable coinage and credit support. Efficient fiscal systems ensured readiness and supply for troops. Economy supported both governance and security reliably across empire. International merchants trusted Abbasid coins and banking mechanisms. Trade with India, Africa, and Europe increased consistently. Baghdad became a central node in global economic networks. Currency and banking reinforced Abbasid influence beyond political borders permanently. Abbasids improved agriculture with advanced irrigation techniques. Canals, dikes, and water wheels expanded productive land. Fertile soil supported larger harvests across the empire. Food production increased to sustain growing populations steadily. Engineered canals directed river water to farms efficiently. Agricultural lands in Mesopotamia thrived under careful management. Irrigation supported both cereal and cash crop cultivation. Empire-wide food security strengthened economic and social stability. Water wheels lifted water from rivers into canals. Fields previously dry became fertile and productive quickly. Farmers cultivated wheat, barley, dates, and vegetables effectively. Technology improved yields and encouraged rural prosperity consistently. State-managed irrigation projects maintained and repaired canals regularly. Laborers and engineers coordinated construction under caliphal oversight. Communities relied on water distribution for agriculture successfully. Centralized planning ensured equitable access to irrigation systems. Flood control prevented destruction of crops and settlements. Seasonal river management regulated water flow precisely. Dams and reservoirs stored water for dry periods. Abbasid agriculture became resilient and highly productive permanently. Agricultural expansion supported population growth and urbanization actively. Cities depended on consistent food supply from surrounding fields. Farmers contributed surplus for trade and taxation efficiently. Rural prosperity reinforced both economy and state authority reliably. Cash crops like sugarcane, cotton, and dates flourished. Irrigation enabled profitable cultivation for local and export markets. Agricultural innovation supported both rural and urban economies. Baghdad and provincial markets benefited from surplus production consistently. Technological knowledge spread across the empire through engineers. Water management skills were shared and applied regionally. Innovation improved agricultural efficiency and sustainability systematically. Irrigation strengthened long-term economic and social stability permanently. Agriculture supported livestock and textile production effectively. Cotton fields fed textile mills and merchants efficiently. Fodder for animals improved transport and agricultural labor. Integrated economy depended on successful irrigation and cultivation consistently. Trade routes benefited from surplus agricultural goods actively. Grains, dates, and cotton were transported to distant cities. Merchants profited while local communities gained wealth steadily. Irrigation-linked agriculture reinforced both trade and empire-wide prosperity permanently. Rural taxation contributed to central revenue efficiently. Agricultural output funded bureaucracy, army, and public projects. Reliable harvests ensured consistent flow of resources. Economy thrived under organized agricultural and fiscal systems consistently. Irrigation projects fostered employment and technical skill development. Laborers learned engineering, water management, and maintenance techniques. Knowledge transfer strengthened local expertise and sustainability reliably. Infrastructure investments improved productivity and social cohesion per mile. Innovation encouraged crop diversity and experimentation actively. Farmers tried new grains, fruits, and irrigation methods. Agricultural research increased yields and adapted to climate challenges. Abbasid agriculture became a model of efficiency and innovation. State and private initiatives cooperated on irrigation effectively. Caliphs funded large projects, while local communities maintained smaller canals. Collaboration ensured maximum productivity and equitable water distribution. Food security and prosperity increased under organized irrigation management. Baghdad benefited from surplus production, supporting urban growth. Markets were supplied with grain, fruits, and fibers regularly. Population expansion was sustained by improved agricultural productivity. Irrigation underpinned Abbasid economic and social stability permanently. Agricultural expansion contributed to intellectual and technological advancement. Engineering innovations spread to other fields and industries actively. Practical problem solving in irrigation inspired broader scientific progress. Food, economy, and knowledge grew hand in hand under Abbasid's consis. Baghdad's markets were vibrant and bustling daily. Merchants displayed silk, spices, and fine metals. Traders from Asia, Africa, and Europe gathered. Goods flowed through the city from distant lands. Silk from China dazzled wealthy merchants and elites. Soft, colorful fabrics adorned homes and palaces elegantly. Luxury items represented wealth and social status consistently. Trade brought exotic textiles to urban centers permanently. Spices from India and Southeast Asia enhanced cuisine. Cinnamon, pepper, and cloves added flavor and value. Merchants transported them carefully across deserts and seas. Baghdad became the hub for exotic culinary goods reliably. Precious metals, gold, and silver circulated in markets. Coins and ornaments fueled both trade and display. Jewelry and artifacts reflected craftsmanship and economic prosperity. Commerce created wealth and supported artistic production actively. Marketplaces served as cultural and economic exchange centers. Ideas, languages, and traditions spread along trade corridors. Foreign visitors brought news, knowledge, and inventions consistently. Baghdad thrived as a cosmopolitan hub of exchange permanently. Caravans arrived with bulk goods from neighboring regions. Dates, grains, and textiles supplemented luxury imports effectively. Local artisans produced goods for domestic and international markets. Markets reflected both local production and global trade efficiently. Trading practices encouraged banking and credit systems actively. Letters of credit and coins facilitated large transactions safely. Financial innovation supported merchants and expanded commerce extensively. Baghdad's economy grew through integrated trade networks permanently. Street markets offered spices, perfumes, and rare items. Shoppers navigated bustling alleys filled with color and scent. Vendors called out prices and advertised exotic merchandise. Commerce created a lively, dynamic urban culture consistently. Luxury goods influenced fashion, decoration, and social practices. Merchants profited from demand among elites and royalty. Abbasid caliphs promoted trade to enhance wealth and prestige. Markets reflected political power and economic sophistication permanently. Trade connected Abbasid markets with India, China, and Africa. Goods traveled over land and sea through organized networks. Merchants managed logistics, storage, and taxation efficiently. Commerce strengthened both the state and urban prosperity reliably. Markets contributed to cultural exchange and intellectual life. Travelers brought ideas, books, and scientific knowledge regularly. Baghdad became a center of learning through trade activity. Economic and intellectual growth were closely intertwined consistently. Market activity stimulated production of coins, textiles, and crafts. Guilds organized artisans and regulated quality for trade. Local production supported urban economy alongside imported goods. Baghdad became both a consumer and production hub permanently. Merchants formed networks connecting cities across the empire. Trade agreements ensured safe passage and fair exchange. Commercial relationships encouraged political alliances and cooperation actively. Baghdad controlled flow of goods across distant regions efficiently. Market revenues funded public works and imperial projects actively. Infrastructure, mosques, and libraries benefited from commercial taxes. Wealth circulation reinforced political stability and cultural development. Economy thrived through vibrant markets and extensive trade consistently. Baghdad's marketplace symbolized Abbasid prosperity and global influence. Goods from distant lands reflected empire's reach and power. Trade networks showcased economic strength and cosmopolitan culture permanently. Markets connected wealth, knowledge, and culture under Abbasid rule efficiently. Abbasid economy connected Asia, Africa, and Europe. Trade networks spread goods, wealth, and influence widely. Merchants, artisans, and bankers fueled international commerce actively. Baghdad became the center of global economic activity. Silk, spices, and precious metals flowed continuously. Caravans and ships transported goods efficiently across continents. Commerce strengthened political alliances and cultural exchange consistently. Economic prosperity reflected Abbasid authority and sophistication permanently. Markets in Baghdad influenced cities throughout the empire. Urban centers prospered from both local and international trade. Wealth circulated among merchants, artisans, and state officials. Abbasid governance relied on economic growth and stability reliably. Banking innovations allowed large-scale trade to flourish actively. Letters of credit enabled safe transfer of wealth securely. Merchants invested in caravans, ports, and market infrastructure. Financial systems expanded commerce across vast imperial networks effectively. Agricultural surplus supported urban populations and trade efficiently. Irrigation and farming innovations ensured consistent food production. Rural productivity fueled cities and contributed to exports. Abbasid economy balanced agriculture, trade, and urban prosperity permanently. Taxation systems funded administration, defense, and public works. Revenue supported infrastructure, libraries, and cultural institutions steadily. State policies encouraged commerce and maintained market confidence. Economic stability reinforced political authority across the empire reliably. Caravan routes connected Mesopotamia to India, China, and Africa. Merchants traveled across deserts, mountains, and seas consistently. Global commerce allowed exchange of goods, knowledge, and culture. Abbasid influence extended far beyond political borders permanently. Craftsmen produced textiles, pottery, glass, and metalworks efficiently. Local production complemented imported goods for diverse markets. Guilds maintained quality and regulated trade standards effectively. Economy thrived through skilled artisans and international commerce consistently. Trade fairs and markets stimulated both economic and social life. Buyers and sellers exchanged goods, news, and ideas actively. Cultural and intellectual interaction grew alongside commerce steadily. Baghdad's economy shaped society and civilization permanently. Abbasid ships transported goods through Persian Gulf and Mediterranean. Ports facilitated maritime commerce between distant regions efficiently. Maritime trade complemented overland caravans for faster delivery. Empire-wide commerce supported wealth, security, and cultural growth reliably. Economic prosperity allowed Abbasids to patronize science and arts. Libraries, observatories, and universities flourished with commercial funding. Wealth from trade supported intellectual and artistic endeavors continuously. Economy reinforced both cultural achievement and imperial authority permanent. Currency and banking innovations facilitated smooth international trade. Merchants relied on gold, silver, and letters of credit. Financial systems reduced risk and encouraged expansion actively. Baghdad emerged as a global financial and commercial hub consistently. Agriculture, crafts, and trade were interconnected effectively. Surplus production fueled markets and long-distance commerce efficiently. Economic integration strengthened empire-wide stability and prosperity consistently. Abbasid economic policy fostered both wealth and social order permanently. Global commerce expanded Abbasid influence beyond military conquest. Trade connected cultures, knowledge, and innovation across continents. Economic networks supported diplomatic, scientific, and cultural exchange. Baghdad became a hub of world civilization actively. Abbasid economy inspired European, African, and Asian trade practices. Techniques, coinage, and banking spread internationally through merchants. Economic models influenced future empires and global commerce. Baghdad remained a symbol of prosperity and innovation permanently. The empire's wealth attracted scholars, merchants, and travelers. International commerce reinforced Baghdad's status as global capital. Trade fueled intellectual, cultural, and scientific achievements consistently. Abbasid economy drove civilization forward on multiple fronts reliably. Islamic art flourished under Abbasid Caliphs' guidance. Calligraphy, architecture, and decorative arts thrived beautifully. Mosques, palaces, and libraries displayed intricate design. Visual expression reflected faith, power, and sophistication consistently. Poetry captured emotion, history, and cultural identity vividly. Famous poets composed works praising love and wisdom. Arabic language enriched literature across the empire extensively. Verse circulated in courts, schools, and marketplaces widely. Literary gatherings fostered creativity and intellectual dialogue actively. Writers shared stories, philosophy, and scientific ideas freely. Cultural life was vibrant, interconnected, and intellectually stimulating. Baghdad became a hub for literary and artistic expression permanently. Book production expanded with careful copying and translation. Manuscripts preserved classical knowledge from Greek, Persian, and Indian sources. Libraries grew in size and diversity across cities efficiently. Preservation of literature ensured transmission of knowledge to future generations reliable. Artisans developed unique Islamic styles combining function and beauty. Geometric patterns, arabesques, and calligraphy adorned buildings elegantly. Art reflected both religious devotion and social sophistication. Abbasid aesthetic influenced regional and global artistic trends permanently. Poetic themes included love, morality, and philosophical reflection. Courts sponsored competitions to celebrate poetic skill extensively. Literature became a marker of cultural refinement and prestige. Intellectual expression was deeply respected across Abbasid society consistently. Translation of foreign works enriched Abbasid literary culture actively. Greek, Persian, and Indian texts inspired philosophical and scientific writing. Writers and scholars integrated multiple traditions creatively. Literature reflected cosmopolitan and intellectually curious society permanently. Music accompanied poetry in social and religious gatherings regularly. Instruments, melodies, and song enhanced artistic and cultural experience. Court musicians entertained and educated with refined performances. Arts were supported by patronage and societal appreciation consistently. Illustrated manuscripts became highly valued for beauty and knowledge. Miniature paintings depicted stories, religious events, and history. Visual art complemented literary and architectural achievements extensively. Baghdad and other cities displayed masterpieces of cultural expression permanently. Poets like Abu Nuwas influenced Arabic literature profoundly. Themes of wine, love, and nature enriched literary tradition. Abbasid culture celebrated intellectual freedom and creativity actively. Literature became both entertainment and moral instruction consistently. Artisans crafted metalwork, ceramics, and textiles with precision. Decorative objects reflected wealth, religion, and aesthetic taste. Luxury goods symbolized Abbasid power and cultural sophistication. Art and craftsmanship flourished alongside commerce and administration permanently. Libraries preserved works from across the Islamic world actively. Scholars and students accessed texts for study and research. Written culture supported education, science, and philosophy consistently. Knowledge dissemination strengthened intellectual and artistic life permanently. Calligraphy elevated written Arabic into an artistic medium. Quranic texts, poetry, and official documents displayed mastery. Beauty and legibility combined in manuscripts and inscriptions efficiently. Script reflected devotion, elegance, and Abbasid sophistication permanently. Cultural flourishing enhanced identity, unity, and prestige within the empire. Literature, art, and poetry shaped social and political discourse. Creative expression reflected diversity, intellect, and cosmopolitan society. Baghdad became the symbolic heart of Islamic culture permanently. Artistic and literary patronage encouraged experimentation and excellence actively. Caliphs rewarded innovation, skill, and mastery in arts. Scholar artists thrived under state support and societal respect. Cultural life prospered, leaving a lasting legacy of achievement permanently. Abbasid caliphs promoted Islamic scholarship extensively. Religious scholars studied Quran, Hadith, and law systematically. Schools and madrasas supported theological and legal education. Islamic knowledge spread widely across the empire consistently. Sunni traditions were strengthened under Abbasid patronage actively. Caliphs emphasized doctrinal unity and religious orthodoxy carefully. Scholars codified practices, jurisprudence, and ritual guidelines. Sunni Islam became widely established throughout the empire permanently. Hadith collections were compiled meticulously by expert scholars. Authentic sayings of Prophet Muhammad were verified carefully. Transmission chains were recorded to ensure reliability and authenticity. Religious texts guided law, governance, and personal conduct consistently. Madrasis educated students in Sharia, theology, and ethics. Curriculum combined law, grammar, and interpretation of scripture. Future judges, scholars, and administrators were trained effectively. Religious education strengthened society's moral and legal foundations permanently. Caliphs consulted scholars for governance and legal matters. Religious advice informed political, judicial, and social decisions. Scholar-caliph collaboration reinforced both legitimacy and policy coherence. Religious authority supported central governance across the empire reliably. Debates among jurists refined Islamic jurisprudence creatively. Differences in opinion led to development of multiple schools. Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi'i, and Hanbali doctrines evolved systematically. Sunni law became structured, comprehensive, and widely practiced permanently. Qadis implemented legal rulings derived from Sharia consistently. Judges resolved disputes fairly according to established precedents. Courts maintained public order and justice efficiently. Legal consistency reinforced both religious and state authority reliably. Theological scholars wrote extensively on belief, ethics, and morality. Treatises addressed worship, piety, and societal responsibilities carefully. Religious literature shaped intellectual and cultural life deeply. Islamic thought flourished alongside art, science, and governance permanently. Sufism and spiritual practices coexisted with Sunni orthodoxy peacefully. Mystical literature explored personal devotion and ethical conduct. Spiritual teachings influenced daily life and moral education actively. Religious diversity contributed to cultural richness and social cohesion consistently. Fatwas guided rulers, merchants, and citizens in daily affairs. Scholarly rulings resolved complex questions of law and ethics. Advice reinforced moral standards and regulated economic, political, social conduct. Religious authority integrated governance with faith across the empire permanently. Caliphs established libraries and centers for religious study actively. Collections included Quranic manuscripts, Hadith compilations, and legal texts. Scholars accessed resources to advance knowledge and interpretation. Religious education and intellectual inquiry flourished under patronage consist. Sunni scholarship influenced judicial and educational institutions widely. Courts, madrasis, and mosques followed standardized religious guidance. Legal and moral systems were codified across the empire efficiently. Religious teachings reinforced cultural unity and social order permanently. Abbasid support allowed scholars to travel and exchange knowledge. Religious ideas spread across cities, provinces, and regions effectively. Intellectual networks connected students, teachers, and jurists systematically. Islamic scholarship reached unprecedented depth and geographical extent consist. Religious debates encouraged critical thinking and textual interpretation actively. Methodical analysis ensured accurate understanding of Quran and Hadith. Scholars developed reasoning and jurisprudential methodology systematically. Sunni traditions became intellectually robust and widely respected. Islamic law guided governance, commerce, and societal ethics carefully. Integration of religion and state strengthened legitimacy and cohesion. Sunni orthodoxy defined moral, legal, and cultural life reliably. Religious scholarship supported Abbasid authority and empire-wide stability permanently. Abbasid culture merged Arab, Persian, and local elements. Architecture reflected Persian symmetry and Arab aesthetic principles. Palaces, mosques, and cities displayed diverse artistic influences. Integration created a unique imperial cultural identity permanently. Persian administrative traditions influenced governance and bureaucracy heavily. Non-Arab officials introduced structured record-keeping and fiscal practices. Administrative blending strengthened both local and central authority. Empire-wide integration promoted efficiency, stability, and cohesion. Literature reflected multicultural influences and storytelling traditions. Persian epics merged with Arabic poetic style beautifully. Fables, tales, and historical narratives circulated widely. Cultural synthesis enriched education, poetry, and public discourse permanently. Artisans combined Arab calligraphy with Persian decorative motifs. Metalwork, ceramics, and textiles displayed hybrid designs elegantly. Innovation flourished from the fusion of diverse techniques. Art became a symbol of cosmopolitan Abbasid culture consistently. Music incorporated melodies and instruments from multiple regions. Arab rhythms, Persian modes, and local instruments blended harmoniously. Cultural festivals showcased performances from diverse traditions actively. Urban life resonated with music, dance, and social exchange permanently. Religious practices reflected diverse interpretations and local customs. Sunni orthodoxy merged with regional rituals carefully. Local traditions were respected while promoting Islamic unity. Cultural integration reinforced both faith and social cohesion consistently. Language and literature blended Persian, Arabic, and local dialects. Translations enriched Arabic vocabulary and literary expression widely. Scholars adapted texts from Greek, Persian, and Indian sources. Cultural blending advanced intellectual, scientific, and artistic achievement permanently. Architecture integrated Persian domes with Arab decorative scripts. Mosques and palaces exhibited a fusion of styles elegantly. Urban landscapes reflected imperial and regional aesthetics simultaneously. Cultural hybridity became a hallmark of Abbasid visual identity consistently. Festivals and ceremonies combined customs from multiple regions actively. Celebrations included music, poetry, food, and social rituals. Communities participated in shared cultural experiences across the empire. Blending traditions reinforced unity and imperial pride permanently. Clothing and fashion reflected Arab, Persian, and local tastes. Silk robes, embroidered garments, and practical attire coexisted widely. Merchants and artisans spread diverse styles across cities. Cultural expression was visible in daily life and trade consistently. Education integrated multicultural knowledge systems systematically. Persian science, Greek philosophy, and Arabic scholarship coexisted. Students learned from diverse teachers in cosmopolitan centers. Intellectual blending enriched scientific, literary, and philosophical pursuits permanently. Culinary traditions combined flavors from across the empire actively. Spices, grains, and cooking techniques reflected diverse origins. Banquets showcased imperial wealth and cultural sophistication consistently. Food culture symbolized both integration and cosmopolitan society permanently. Calligraphy and manuscript decoration merged regional styles elegantly. Persian miniatures complemented Arabic script and artistic conventions. Books became cultural objects, reflecting synthesis of traditions. Manuscripts preserved multicultural knowledge and aesthetic achievement reliably. Cultural blending influenced political symbolism and ceremonial practices. Court rituals incorporated Persian grandeur and Arab tradition. Ceremonial art reflected imperial legitimacy and social order. Blended practices strengthened central authority and public respect permanently. Integration of local traditions enhanced provincial loyalty actively. Respect for regional customs reduced resistance and encouraged cooperation. Provincial governance became culturally sensitive and socially effective consistently. Blending traditions supported empire-wide stability and legitimacy. Abbasid cities bustled with vibrant daily activity. Baghdad, Samarra, and Basra were cultural hubs. Markets overflowed with goods, food, and crafts. Urban life reflected wealth, trade, and sophistication permanently. Street vendors sold spices, textiles, and exotic items. Citizens engaged in commerce, socializing, and entertainment actively. City streets echoed with music, poetry, and chatter. Public squares became centers of community interaction consistently. Architectural marvels showcased caliphal and civic prestige. Mosques, palaces, and public buildings dazzled residents. Gardens and fountains added beauty and serenity widely. Urban landscapes demonstrated engineering skill and artistic taste permanently. Education flourished in cities with schools and libraries. Scholars taught religion, law, and science to students. Learning was accessible to diverse social and ethnic groups. Knowledge spread rapidly across urban centers consistently. Urban markets attracted merchants from across the empire. Trade connected local craftspeople with international commerce efficiently. Imported silk, spices, and metals transformed city life. Economic prosperity supported cultural and social development permanently. Public baths, fountains, and streets enhanced daily comfort. Civic planning reflected attention to hygiene, convenience, and aesthetics. Infrastructure promoted social interaction and urban prosperity actively. Quality of life increased across major Abbasid cities consistently. Entertainment thrived with poetry readings, music, and storytelling. Theaters and gathering places hosted performances and discussions. Culture and leisure were integral to urban identity widely. Cities became hubs of intellectual and artistic activity permanently. Religious life shaped community rhythms and public ceremonies actively. Friday prayers, festivals, and processions unified citizens socially. Mosques served as spiritual, educational, and social centers. Urban religiosity influenced governance and everyday conduct consistently. Water and sanitation infrastructure supported city populations efficiently. Canals, aqueducts, and wells ensured clean water access. Public works reflected administrative planning and civic responsibility reliably. Urban health and productivity benefited from structured infrastructure permanently. Social mobility was possible through trade, scholarship, and patronage. Merchants, artisans, and scholars could achieve influence actively. Urban centers attracted talent and ambition from diverse regions. Cities fostered innovation, learning, and economic opportunity consistently. Arts and crafts flourished with diverse influences and patronage. Workshops produced textiles, ceramics, metalwork, and luxury goods. Urban artisans combined creativity, skill, and commercial demand efficiently. Craftsmanship reinforced cultural identity and economic prosperity permanently. Civic administration ensured law, order, and public safety actively. City officials regulated markets, infrastructure, and urban services. Governance maintained stability and social harmony across cities consistently. Abbasid urban planning reflected foresight and imperial authority permanently. Public spaces encouraged dialogue, commerce, and community interaction. Squares, gardens, and mosques hosted social and civic life. Urban culture was dynamic, inclusive, and diverse actively. Cities exemplified Abbasid prosperity and societal sophistication permanently. Population density promoted cultural exchange and intellectual growth efficiently. Diverse residents shared language, trade, and knowledge actively. Cosmopolitan urban centers were engines of creativity and innovation. City life defined the empire's social and cultural identity permanently. Luxury goods, trade networks, and wealth influenced daily life. Fashion, cuisine, and leisure reflected urban sophistication widely. Urban centers set standards for culture, commerce, and art. Cities represented the peak of Abbasid social life permanently. Abbasid caliphs generously supported scholars and artists. Libraries, observatories, and workshops received imperial funding. Patronage encouraged creativity, innovation, and intellectual growth. Baghdad became a center of cultural excellence permanently. Caliphs sponsored translations of Greek, Persian, and Indian texts. Scholars preserved knowledge and expanded scientific understanding widely. Translation movement enriched literature, philosophy, and mathematics actively. State support accelerated learning across the empire consistently. Artists produced architecture, calligraphy, and decorative art skillfully. Palaces, mosques, and public spaces displayed artistic mastery. Imperial commissions elevated creative expression to unprecedented levels. Patronage ensured cultural production flourished under Abbasid rule permanently. Poets and writers received financial and social support actively. Courts hosted literary salons and intellectual gatherings regularly. Caliphs recognized talent and rewarded literary achievement consistently. Cultural patronage created a thriving environment for creativity permanently. Scientific endeavors were encouraged through funding and facilities. Astronomers, mathematicians, and physicians advanced knowledge with resources. Observatories, laboratories, and libraries supported research efficiently. Caliphal support strengthened the empire's intellectual and scientific standing. Philosophers and theologians debated ideas under scholarly patronage. Religious and secular thought flourished with state encouragement. Centers of learning attracted students from across the empire. Patronage promoted intellectual diversity and critical thinking consistently. Artisans benefited from royal commissions for mosques and palaces. Decorative arts reflected both innovation and cultural tradition actively. Caliphs ensured masterpieces were created for both functional and aesthetic purposes. Imperial support reinforced prestige and artistic excellence permanently. Medical scholars advanced hospitals, research, and treatments efficiently. Funding allowed translation of medical texts and studies widely. Knowledge dissemination improved healthcare and scholarly reputation consistently. Patronage promoted scientific progress, benefiting the empire permanently. Musicians and performers entertained courts and public festivals regularly. State support encouraged music, performance, and cultural expression actively. Performing arts complemented literary and visual achievements across society. Patronage ensured arts thrived alongside scholarship permanently. Caliphs themselves engaged with scholars and artists personally. Courts became centers of intellectual debate and creative exchange. Interaction encouraged innovation, mentorship, and knowledge dissemination widely. Patronage cultivated a culture of learning and excellence permanently. Astronomical and mathematical research flourished with resources and funding. Caliphs commissioned instruments, observatories, and experimental studies actively. Scholars produced works advancing both theory and application consistently. Patronage strengthened Abbasid reputation as global intellectual. Scholarship and arts were intertwined with state prestige actively. Cultural production enhanced legitimacy, power, and imperial identity. Abbasid rule was celebrated through visible intellectual and artistic achievements. Patronage reinforced authority while promoting societal enrichment permanently. Libraries became hubs of research, study, and translation widely. Caliphal investment preserved texts, encouraged copying, and maintained knowledge. Scholars accessed resources for education, innovation, and inquiry efficiently. Patronage ensured continuity of learning across generations permanently. Caliphs supported both local and foreign intellectuals consistently. Knowledge and talents were welcomed from across the Islamic world. Cosmopolitan patronage fostered diversity and collaboration effectively. Scholarly networks strengthened cultural and scientific development permanently. Literature, science, and art thrived simultaneously under Abbasid rule. Funding, recognition, and institutional support encouraged peak achievement. Patronage created enduring legacies in multiple cultural domains actively. Caliphs ensured culture and knowledge became pillars of society permanently. Abbasid patronage influenced future Islamic empires and beyond. Scholarship and art set standards for global intellectual leadership. Cultural investment enhanced empire-wide prestige, knowledge, and innovation widely. Legacy of support for arts and scholarship remained permanent. Abbasids relied on professional armies for security. Soldiers were trained, disciplined, and well-equipped consistently. The empire maintained troops across cities and frontiers actively. Military organization supported both expansion and internal stability permanently. Turkish slave soldiers, called ghilman, became elite troops. They were loyal directly to the caliph and state. Trained from youth, they mastered combat and tactics efficiently. Their skill enhanced Abbasid military strength and reputation reliably. Recruitment included volunteers, slaves, and mercenaries from diverse regions. Armies reflected multi-ethnic composition of the vast empire. Integration of foreign soldiers increased flexibility and military capacity. Diverse troops were effective against both internal and external threats permanent. Caliphs maintained standing armies to prevent tribal unrest actively. Professional soldiers reduced reliance on tribal levies or local militias. Centralized control strengthened loyalty and operational efficiency consistently. Military professionalism ensured rapid response to crises across Empire. Turkish soldiers often rose to high command positions. Some became influential governors or military advisors actively. Their loyalty sometimes shifted based on political or personal ambition. Caliphal authority depended on balancing power among elite troops consistently. Soldiers were stationed in strategic cities and border regions. They protected trade routes, provinces, and the capital effectively. Garrisons ensured security against rebellions and foreign invasions reliably. Deployment reflected strategic planning and military foresight permanently. Armies were organized into infantry, cavalry, and specialized units. Cavalry, particularly Turkish soldiers, excelled in mobility and combat. Infantry provided support and secured key positions efficiently. Professional structure enhanced battlefield effectiveness and empire-wide security consistent. Military training included weapon mastery, tactics, and discipline. Soldiers participated in maneuvers, drills, and strategic exercises actively. Regular training maintained readiness for both war and unrest reliably. Highly trained troops reinforced Abbasid authority across the empire permanently. Ghilman often received salaries, housing, and privileges from the state. Financial and social incentives encouraged loyalty and professionalism consistently. Elite soldiers became both protectors and instruments of political influence. State support strengthened the military institution and caliphate. Turkish slave soldiers sometimes acted as kingmakers in politics. Their power influenced succession, appointments, and caliphal decisions actively. Balancing military influence became a central challenge for rulers consistently. Professional armies had both strength and potential risk permanently. Deployment included frontier regions facing Byzantine and other threats. Soldiers fortified borders and responded to raids effectively. Military presence discouraged invasions and stabilized volatile areas reliably. Professional armies were essential for defense and expansion permanently. Armies participated in campaigns to secure provinces and trade routes. Logistics, supply, and communication were managed centrally and efficiently. Coordination ensured successful deployment of troops across vast regions consistently. Military professionalism enabled both strategic defense and approach. Turkish soldiers were integrated into court and administrative functions. They advised caliphs on security, governance, and political matters actively. Military and civil authority intersected, in Abbasid governance consistently. Integration of troops strengthened state control and empire administrat. Elite soldiers developed camaraderie, hierarchy, and internal discipline actively. Cohesion enhanced operational efficiency and battlefield performance reliably. Structured chains of command maintained order and accountability consistently. Professional military organization became a hallmark of AB. The system allowed rapid mobilization against both internal and external threats. Rebellions, bandits, and rival armies were suppressed effectively. Empire-wide security depended on discipline, loyalty, and strategic planning consistently. Professional armies ensured stability and caliphal authority. Abbasid military organization influenced future Islamic armies significantly. Use of professional troops, slave soldiers, and strategic deployment became model. Military innovations enhanced both governance and empire-wide security reliably. Turkish soldiers remained central to Abbasid military power. Abbasids faced constant threats from Byzantium's empire. Border fortifications were strengthened along northern provinces actively. Garrisons were maintained to respond quickly to attacks. Military readiness ensured protection of cities and trade routes permanently. Regular campaigns were launched to deter Byzantine raids effectively. Frontier troops defended key passes and strategic towns reliably. Caliphal generals coordinated with local governors for defense. Defense planning integrated intelligence, logistics, and tactical foresight consistently. Regional threats included local rebellions and rival warlords. Provincial governors sometimes challenged central authority actively. Troops were deployed to suppress uprisings efficiently. Maintaining loyalty was critical to empire-wide stability permanently. Fortresses and watchtowers monitored enemy movements along borders. Observation allowed early warnings and rapid military response effectively. Strategic locations were garrisoned with elite Turkish soldiers. Military engineering reinforced defenses against sieges and invasions consistently. Naval forces protected maritime trade and coastal cities actively. Ships patrolled the Persian Gulf and Mediterranean regularly. Naval readiness prevented raids and secured commercial routes reliably. Maritime defense complemented land-based military strength permanently. Alliances and diplomacy were used alongside military campaigns strategically. Treaties with neighboring powers reduced large-scale conflicts temporarily. Political negotiation complemented military deterrence and strategy consistently. Abbasids balanced war and diplomacy for frontier security permanently. Supply lines were protected to ensure sustained defense efforts. Caravans transported food, weapons, and reinforcements efficiently. Logistics maintained troop readiness and operational effectiveness reliably. Well-organized support ensured continuous military capability permanently. Military intelligence monitored rival states and internal conspiracies actively. Spies and scouts reported troop movements and enemy plans consistently. Information informed strategy, deployments, and defensive preparations effectively. Knowledge strengthened Abbasid military advantage and frontier. Campaigns sometimes extended into enemy territory to secure borders. Offensive operations deterred incursions and demonstrated imperial strength. Strategic victories reinforced caliphal prestige and regional stability actively. Military success maintained territorial integrity and political authority. Provincial governors coordinated defense and managed local militia effectively. Central commands supervised troops to ensure cohesive response reliably. Integrated leadership allowed rapid mobilization and strategic flexibility permanently. Combined forces strengthened Abbasid ability to counter-dive. Armies trained continuously to respond to various attack scenarios. Fortification drills, maneuvers, and combat exercises were routine. Preparedness reduced vulnerability and enhanced battlefield performance effectively. Professional military discipline maintained security and frontier stability per Abbasids constructed roads and supply depots along threatened regions. Infrastructure supported troop movement, communication, and logistics efficiently. Strategic planning ensured rapid response to sudden invasions reliably. State investment in infrastructure reinforced military and imperial control. Defensive campaigns fostered loyalty among soldiers and governors actively. Victories increased morale and reinforced allegiance to the caliph. Shared purpose united military and civilian communities consistently. Defense strengthened social cohesion and centralized authority permanently. Successful defense preserved trade routes and economic prosperity actively. Merchants traveled safely along land and sea networks reliably. Economic stability reinforced support for military and administrative structures consistently. Empire-wide commerce depended on secure borders and trade routes. Abbasid defensive strategies influenced later Islamic military planning extensively. Fortification, frontier garrisons, and professional troops became models. Lessons from Byzantine conflicts shaped future caliphal military doctrine. Defense maintained both sovereignty and strategic influence across. Abbasid Empire faced frequent internal uprisings and unrest. Tribal factions and local governors challenged central authority actively. Rebellions disrupted military cohesion and delayed strategic operations. Caliphs struggled to maintain loyalty among elite troops permanently. Ethnic and regional divisions fueled internal military tensions consistently. Turkish slave soldiers sometimes opposed Arab or local factions. Conflicting loyalties reduced coordination during critical campaigns effectively. Unity was weakened despite central oversight and command permanently. Peasant revolts arose from taxation and social inequality actively. Rural populations resisted heavy levies and local oppression regularly. Military had to suppress uprisings rather than defend frontiers efficiently. Internal unrest drained resources and morale across the empire permanently. Provincial governors gained autonomy during periods of rebellion effectively. Local forces sometimes ignored central commands for self-interest actively. Fragmentation weakened imperial army coordination and effectiveness reliably. Rebellions undermined both administrative and military control perma. Sectarian conflicts occasionally sparked armed confrontations within cities. Religious and ethnic disputes escalated into military confrontations actively. Urban garrisons were divided along factional or ideological lines. Internal strife diminished cohesion and strategic readiness consistently. Mercenary troops sometimes switched allegiance during rebellions rapidly. Loyalty depended on pay, patronage, and political advantage actively. Instability made centralized control over the military increasingly difficult. Rebellion influence extended into provincial and elite military structures. Disputes over succession frequently triggered palace revolts actively. Claimants to the caliphate gained support from rival factions. Elite soldiers were drawn into political conflicts consistently. Military unity fractured during periods of dynastic instability permanently. Centralized command attempted to suppress uprisings with loyal troops. Efforts were often undermined by divided loyalties and logistics. Rebellions highlighted structural weaknesses in army management actively. Caliphal authority relied on negotiation and force simultaneously permanently. Tribal militia sometimes allied with rebels for personal gain. Local power brokers leveraged unrest to expand influence effectively. Fragmented loyalty reduced military effectiveness across key regions consistently. Rebellions destabilized both provinces and imperial strategic planning permanently. Internal rebellions forced redeployment of troops from frontier defense. External threats could exploit internal weaknesses effectively. Military focus shifted from defense to suppression actively. Abbasid control weakened where rebellions persisted for extended periods permanently. Corruption and favoritism among military commanders fueled unrest actively. Rivalries created opportunities for rebellion and factionalism consistently. Trust and discipline declined within units facing political tension. Military effectiveness suffered under divided command structures permanently. Caliphs relied on negotiation and rewards to restore loyalty actively. Bribes, titles, and positions were used to placate factions. Temporary solutions often failed to resolve underlying tensions consistently. Internal instability repeatedly challenged Abbasid military cohesion permanently. Urban revolts disrupted supply lines and city garrisons efficiently. Markets, workshops, and administrative centers were often caught in conflict. Logistics for army campaigns suffered from civil disorder actively. Military readiness declined under prolonged urban unrest consistently. Religious and ideological movements occasionally incited armed resistance actively. Supporters of rival sects mobilized militias against Abbasid authority. Military suppression became both politically and morally challenging effectively. Internal ideological conflict undermined unity and strategico. Rebellion aftermath required rebuilding trust and reorganizing units actively. Casualties, desertions, and disrupted supply weakened army structure. Reinforcement and retraining were necessary for future campaigns consistently. Recovery from internal strife delayed military and administrative inertia. Over time, repeated rebellions eroded central control gradually. Provincial governors and local leaders gained permanent autonomy actively. Military dependence on elite slave soldiers increased with instability. Fragmentation of loyalty foreshadowed eventual decline of caliphal authority permanently. Provincial governors gained increasing independence from caliphal authority. Local power expanded in regions far from Baghdad consistently. Governors controlled taxation, security, and military forces effectively. Central oversight weakened as autonomy grew steadily. Some governors maintained personal armies to enforce their rule. Military strength allowed them to challenge central commands actively. Elite troops sometimes shifted loyalty to provincial leaders reliably. Caliphal influence declined in distant and strategic provinces permanently. Economic control enabled governors to collect taxes and tariffs. Wealth funded local administration, infrastructure, and personal power actively. Financial independence reduced dependence on Baghdad for resources consistently. Governors gained influence over both civil and military matters permanent. Governors sometimes ignored central directives and policies openly. Provincial decisions reflected local priorities over imperial goals actively. Political fragmentation challenged caliphal authority and administrative cohesion consistently. Autonomy complicated governance across vast and diverse territory. Rebellions often strengthened provincial leaders' autonomy significantly. Successful suppression of uprisings enhanced local legitimacy actively. Governors wielded both military and civil power simultaneously consistently. Central authority struggled to assert control effectively over distant regions. Strategic provinces like Egypt and Syria became semi-independent actively. Governors collected taxes, maintained troops, and administered justice locally. Imperial oversight was nominal, while local control was strong. Autonomy created enduring political decentralization across the empire permanently. Caliphs attempted appointments to limit provincial power repeatedly. New governors sometimes replaced old leaders to regain control actively. Efforts were only partially effective against entrenched local authority consistently. Autonomy persisted despite occasional caliphal intervention permanently. Local dynasties emerged from powerful provincial governors actively. Governors' families consolidated power over generations steadily. Hereditary succession in provinces reduced central influence efficiently. Autonomous rule became a structural feature of Abbasid governance permanently. Trade and taxation networks supported governors' independence financially. Control over local economy strengthened authority and political leverage actively. Governors could fund personal armies without central assistance consistently. Financial autonomy reinforced military and administrative in deep. Provincial autonomy influenced military deployments and strategic planning actively. Governors managed frontier defenses and garrisons independently. Coordination with Baghdad often depended on negotiation or persuasion consistently. Strategic regions operated semi-independently from central command. Local justice and administrative systems reflected governors' priorities actively. Courts, law enforcement, and governance adapted to regional needs. Provincial rulers wielded broad discretion in decision-making consistently. Autonomy reshaped administrative practices across the empire permanently. Rebellious governors sometimes allied with external enemies strategically. Provincial power could challenge Abbasid dominance during crises actively. Political fragmentation increased risk of civil war and instability consistently. Autonomy influenced both military and diplomatic dynamics permanently. Cultural patronage by governors reinforced local legitimacy actively. Funding schools, mosques, and public works increased popularity locally. Provincial leaders mirrored caliphal practices to assert authority consistently. Autonomy allowed governors to cultivate regional loyalty permanently. Over time, central reliance on governors became unavoidable actively. Caliphs negotiated, bribed, or co-opted local rulers strategically. Autonomy became an accepted feature of Abbasid imperial structure consistently. Provincial authority shaped the empire's political landscape permanently. Distant provinces sometimes acted independently in foreign affairs actively. Governors negotiated treaties, managed borders, and defended territory locally. Central Baghdad rarely interfered in day-to-day decisions consistently. Autonomy enhanced flexibility, but weakened centralized imperial control. Growing independence of governors foreshadowed eventual decentralization actively. Political fragmentation eroded unity and authority gradually. Autonomy became both a strength and vulnerability simultaneously. Provincial power reshaped the Abbasid Empire's governance permanently. Caliphs gradually lost direct control over armies. Elite troops gained political influence and autonomy actively. Loyalty shifted from caliph to local commanders consistently. Military power became increasingly independent and unpredictable permanently. Turkish slave soldiers sometimes dictated caliphal succession actively. Their elite status gave them leverage over rulers consistently. Caliphs relied on negotiation rather than authority effectively. Central power weakened as military influence grew permanently. Provincial armies acted independently during rebellions and campaigns actively. Governors directed forces without consulting Baghdad regularly. Caliphal orders were ignored or delayed strategically. Army autonomy undermined central command and coordination permanently. Pay and privileges became crucial for maintaining loyalty actively. Delays or reductions caused unrest and insubordination consistently. Financial dependence shaped army behavior and political power effectively. Caliphal control relied increasingly on patronage rather than authority permanently. Internal divisions among soldiers further reduced central authority actively. Factional rivalries weakened cohesion within the imperial army consistently. Command structures were fragmented and influenced by political loyalty. Decline in discipline affected battlefield performance and readiness perm. Military commanders often acted as kingmakers in political struggles actively. They influenced appointments, removals, and succession disputes consistently. Caliphs depended on their support to maintain rule effectively. Army autonomy became a decisive factor in imperial politics permanently. Garrisons in provinces resisted central oversight actively. Local troops prioritized provincial commanders' interests over Baghdad. Strategic deployment was complicated by divided loyalty and authority consistently. Caliphal planning was undermined by decentralized military power permanently. Rival factions within the army sometimes clashed violently actively. Disputes weakened operational efficiency and internal stability consistently. Civil unrest and mutinies threatened both governance and security. Caliphs struggled to maintain order among powerful troops permanently. Dependence on Turkish and foreign troops increased over time actively. Native Arab forces declined in prominence and influence consistently. Military reliance shifted from traditional levies to elite mercenaries. Control of the army moved away from the caliph permanently. Caliphs attempted reforms to restore authority, but failed actively. Military elites resisted changes to pay, command, or status consistently. Reorganization often caused unrest, rather than strengthened loyalty effectively. Attempts to regain control were only partially successful permanently. Provincial governors and army leaders gained combined influence actively. They controlled taxes, troops, and strategic regions consistently. Military autonomy reinforced political decentralization across the empire. Caliphal authority eroded under combined provincial and army power permanently. Strategic decision-making increasingly relied on military elites actively. Caliphs negotiated with powerful commanders instead of issuing orders consistently. Military influence dictated both domestic and foreign policies effectively. Central authority diminished as generals dictated strategic prior. Rebellions and civil wars demonstrated armies' decisive role actively. Troops could support or overthrow rulers at will consistently. Caliphal survival depended on balancing factions within the army. Decline of control shifted power from caliph to military permanently. Army loyalty became transactional rather than based on allegiance actively. Payments, rewards, and privileges determined obedience consistently. Commanders exploited dependence for political and personal gain effectively. Caliphal power weakened as military influence became paramount permanently. Decentralized military authority affected empire-wide defense and campaigns actively. Coordinated action was difficult due to divided command consistently. Frontiers were sometimes left vulnerable to external threats effectively. Decline of control compromised strategic security and imperial stability. By the late Abbasid period, caliphal control was symbolic. Military elites dictated appointments, policies, and succession actively. Caliphs retained prestige, but lacked effective operational authority consistently. Army autonomy defined political and military realities permanently. Abbasid control weakened over far provinces steadily. Governors gained autonomy and often ignored Baghdad actively. Communication delays reduced caliphal influence across distant regions. Local rulers made decisions independent of central authority permanently. Military presence was insufficient to enforce central commands consistently. Provincial armies answered to governors rather than caliphs actively. Elite troops often prioritized local interests over imperial orders. Central authority eroded as provinces acted autonomously permanently. Trade and taxation were increasingly controlled locally efficiently. Provincial revenues were used for local administration and military. Baghdad's financial oversight declined as governors asserted independence. Economic decentralization mirrored political and administrative fragmentation permanent. Cultural and religious practices diverged across provinces actively. Local traditions influenced governance and social norms consistently. Standardization of law and administration weakened far from the capital. Autonomy encouraged regional distinctiveness within the Abbasid realm permanently. Rebellions and uprisings further weakened central control actively. Provincial leaders suppressed dissent without caliphal support consistently. Successful revolts reinforced local power and independence effectively. Caliphal influence diminished as authority was challenged permanently. Strategic border regions often resisted Baghdad's directives actively. Frontier governors negotiated treaties and defense independently consistently. Centralized planning was impossible over vast and distant territories. Loss of authority threatened cohesion and imperial stability permanently. Appointed governors sometimes became hereditary rulers over time actively. Family dynasties controlled provinces for generations consistently. Autonomy allowed local governance without caliphal interference effectively. Distant regions became semi-independent political entities permanently. Communication relied on messengers and couriers, often delayed. Orders took months to reach far provinces efficiently. By the time they arrived, local conditions had changed actively. Delayed response weakened central authority and decision-making permanently. Military rebellion in provinces challenged central appointments actively. Disobedient troops supported local governors or rebel leaders consistently. Central Baghdad struggled to enforce compliance across the empire. Provincial autonomy undermined both administrative and military cohesion permanently. Religious authority sometimes conflicted with central Sunni orthodoxy actively. Local clerics supported provincial rulers over distant caliphs consistently. Religious influence reinforced autonomy and reduced caliphal prestige effectively. Cultural divergence strengthened independence across the empire. Economic self-sufficiency of provinces reduced dependence on Baghdad actively. Local markets, trade, and taxation funded governance independently consistently. Revenue collection reinforced provincial power and military capability effectively. Financial independence contributed to decline of central. Diplomacy was increasingly managed locally by governors actively. Alliances with neighbors sometimes bypassed Baghdad's authority consistently. Regional rulers negotiated treaties for protection and trade independently. Foreign relations reflected provincial priorities rather than imperial strategy. Civil administration and law adapted to local customs actively. Governors enforced rules reflecting regional needs and traditions consistently. Standardized imperial law weakened as local practices dominated effectively. Autonomy influenced governance and social order permanently. Military garrisons were loyal to regional commanders actively. Central appointment of officers often ignored or resisted consistently. Provincial autonomy extended into strategic defense and border management. Caliphal military control declined as governors gained influence permanently. Loss of authority encouraged further rebellion and fragmentation actively. Each province functioned as semi-independent political unit consistently. Abbasid central power diminished, while local rulers expanded control. Political fragmentation defined the empire's late-stage reality permanently. By mid-period, Baghdad was largely symbolic authority actively. Provinces exercised real power in administration and defense consistently. Caliphs retained religious and cultural legitimacy, but limited control. Decentralization marked the beginning of the empire's final decline permanently. Independent dynasties emerged across Abbasid territories gradually. Provinces were ruled autonomously by local families actively. Governors established hereditary control over strategic regions consistently. Caliphs struggled to enforce authority far from Baghdad permanently. The Tulunids gained power in Egypt and Syria actively. They collected taxes, maintained armies, and ruled independently consistently. Local governance became firmly detached from central directives effectively. Provincial dynasties consolidated resources and political influence permanently. The Safavids rose in eastern Iran during this period. They expanded territory and controlled trade routes actively. Their military campaigns challenged both local rivals and Baghdad directly. Regional autonomy became a reality across the eastern provinces permanently. Dynasties like the Umayyads controlled Iraq and Baghdad indirectly. They managed caliphs while exercising true political power actively. Caliphs remained figureheads under their military and administrative dominance consistently. Local dynasties dictated both governance and fiscal policies permanently. In North Africa, the Aghlabids asserted independent control actively. They collected taxes, commanded armies, and governed effectively. Abbasid influence was limited to symbolic recognition of authority consistently. Provincial dynasties strengthened regional identity and power permanently. Autonomous dynasties maintained their own military forces efficiently. Troops owed loyalty to local rulers instead of caliphs actively. Independence allowed dynasties to conduct campaigns without Baghdad's approval consistently. Military autonomy reinforced political independence and regional control. Local taxation funded armies, infrastructure, and administration actively. Economic independence reduced reliance on Baghdad for resources consistently. Dynasties managed trade and agricultural production for their regions effectively. Fiscal autonomy enabled long-term stability under local rulers. Independent dynasties patronized scholars, artists, and religious leaders actively. Cultural institutions flourished outside central oversight consistently. Local courts, mosques, and schools reflected regional governance effectively. Dynastic patronage maintained both legitimacy and social cohesion. Some dynasties recognized the caliph nominally for legitimacy actively. They issued coins in the caliph's name for formality consistently. Despite symbolic allegiance, real power rested with regional rulers effectively. Caliphal authority became ceremonial under dynastic autonomy permanently. Competition between dynasties occasionally led to conflicts actively. Regional armies clashed for territory, resources, and influence consistently. Wars weakened central authority and reinforced local power effectively. Military rivalry reinforced fragmentation of the Abbasid Empire permanently. Governors established local administrative systems efficiently. Laws, taxation, and judiciary reflected provincial priorities actively. Autonomous governance became deeply rooted and difficult to reverse consistently. Regional dynasties maintained stable administration without central interference. Dynasties negotiated treaties and alliances independently actively. They conducted diplomacy with neighbors, rivals, and nomadic tribes consistently. External relations often bypassed Baghdad's authority entirely effectively. Foreign policy became regional rather than imperial permanently. Cultural and religious identity flourished under dynastic patronage actively. Local scholars and clerics gained influence regionally consistently. Regional centers became hubs of intellectual, artistic, and religious activity effectively. Dynastic independence reinforced social and cultural cohesion. Autonomy allowed dynasties to control trade routes actively. Merchants and caravans paid taxes directly to local rulers consistently. Regional economies became self-sufficient and prosperous effectively. Economic independence strengthened political and military autonomy permanently. Some dynasties eventually challenged Baghdad's authority openly actively. Attempts to assert central control often failed consistently. Rebellion and negotiation became tools for regional power assertion effectively. Caliphs could only respond with diplomacy or limited military action permanently. By the later Abbasid period, many provinces were effectively independent. The empire existed in name, while dynasties ruled territories actively. Central authority was symbolic, with real governance decentralized consistently. Rise of independent dynasties marked permanent fragmentation of Abbasid Abbasid Empire faced severe economic difficulties steadily. Revenue from distant provinces declined rapidly and consistently. Loss of central control disrupted taxation and trade networks. Financial strain weakened administrative and military functions permanently. Military expenditures consumed a large portion of revenue actively. Elite troops demanded regular pay and privileges consistently. Costly campaigns and frontier defense drained imperial coffers effectively. Economic pressure limited the caliphate's ability to govern permanently. Trade disruptions reduced income from caravan and maritime routes. Conflicts with regional powers and internal unrest slowed commerce actively. Markets struggled to maintain supply of goods efficiently. Economic instability affected urban and provincial prosperity permanently. Agricultural production declined due to war, neglect, and mismanagement actively. Irrigation systems fell into disrepair, reducing crop yields consistently. Famine and food shortages affected cities and rural populations effectively. Economic hardship fueled unrest and weakened state control permanently. Inflation and devaluation undermined monetary stability consistently. Coinage lost value, and commerce became unpredictable actively. Merchants and traders faced uncertainty in pricing and contracts effectively. Financial instability reinforced political fragility across the empire permanently. Rebellion and civil war diverted resources from public works actively. Infrastructure, roads, and water systems deteriorated rapidly consistently. Urban centers suffered from neglect, crime, and disorder effectively. Economic strain compounded political instability permanently. Provincial governors often withheld taxes to maintain local control actively. Baghdad received less revenue, weakening central authority consistently. Autonomous rulers gained financial independence from caliphal oversight effectively. Revenue loss reinforced decentralization permanently. Court corruption and favoritism drained imperial wealth actively. Officials embezzled funds, undermining administration and public trust consistently. Mismanagement reduced effectiveness of military and civil institutions effectively. Corruption deepened economic and political crises permanently. Foreign invasions disrupted trade and taxed resources heavily actively. Regions like Persia and Syria faced raids and occupation consistently. Military defense became more expensive and less effective effectively. External pressure intensified economic strain permanently. Internal factionalism destabilized governance and financial planning actively. Rival groups controlled different regions and resources inconsistently. Conflicting agendas hindered coordinated fiscal policy effectively. Political division amplified economic challenges permanently. Urban unrest arose from unemployment, high taxes, and shortages actively. Protests and riots challenged both local and central authority consistently. Military suppression was costly and further strained the economy effectively. Instability became self-reinforcing across society permanently. Agricultural taxation was uneven and burdensome for peasants actively. Local collection often enriched governors at the expense of farmers consistently. Discontent in rural areas led to rebellion and disruption effectively. Economic mismanagement weakened imperial cohesion permanently. Trade monopolies were controlled by elites and regional powers actively. Merchant independence declined as local rulers imposed taxes consistently. Commerce became fragmented and less profitable effectively. Economic strain spread across urban and rural sectors permanently. Inflated military payrolls reduced funds for civic projects actively. Schools, mosques, and infrastructure suffered neglect consistently. Cultural and social institutions declined under financial pressure effectively. Economic strain affected every level of Abbasid society permanently. Decline in agricultural and trade revenues weakened central authority actively. Caliphs became increasingly dependent on provincial governors consistently. Political instability was fueled by financial vulnerability effectively. Economic weakness accelerated fragmentation permanently. Economic strain and political instability were mutually reinforcing actively. Revolts, rebellion, and corruption compounded financial difficulties consistently. Empire-wide instability eroded caliphal prestige and influence effectively. Economic and political crises defined the late Abbasid period. In 1258, Mongols invaded Baghdad with fury. City walls fell under relentless siege and attack. Caliph al-Mustasim faced overwhelming Mongol military power. Defense efforts failed, despite valiant attempts by troops permanently. Mongol forces looted markets, palaces, and mosques extensively. Wealth, treasures, and manuscripts were destroyed without mercy. Citizens faced massacre, displacement, and immense suffering directly. Cultural and economic devastation shook the empire permanently. Libraries and the House of Wisdom were destroyed entirely. Countless manuscripts and scientific works were burned actively. Knowledge accumulated over centuries was lost forever consistently. Intellectual heritage suffered an irreparable blow permanently. Caliph and his family were executed by Mongols brutally. Symbol of Abbasid authority vanished under Mongol control. Religious and political leadership collapsed within the city immediately. Baghdad lost both governance and symbolic significance permanently. Citizens endured mass killings, starvation, and disease continuously. City infrastructure was razed, homes and markets burned actively. Survivors fled or were enslaved across the Mongol Empire. Population decline transformed Baghdad's demographic landscape permanently. Mosques, palaces, and public buildings were destroyed systematically. Architectural treasures and cultural landmarks vanished within days. The city lost its central role in Islamic civilization. Baghdad's glory and influence disappeared almost entirely permanently. Economic networks collapsed due to trade route disruption actively. Caravans, markets, and financial institutions ceased to operate. Merchants and artisans suffered losses, crippling urban economy consistently. Commerce and prosperity declined drastically across the empire permanently. The Mongol siege demonstrated military superiority for Abbasid defenses. Professional armies and elite troops were overwhelmed rapidly. Strategic fortifications failed to withstand Mongol tactics effectively. Baghdad fell, marking a turning point permanently. Religious centers and institutions were desecrated and looted actively. Scholars, clerics, and students were killed or displaced consistently. Intellectual life and religious instruction in the city ended. Educational and spiritual decline followed immediately and permanently. Historical records document the scale of destruction vividly. Mongol chronicles describe devastation, looting, and human suffering. Abbasid history and cultural memory were scarred deeply. Baghdad's prominence as the intellectual capital vanished permanently. Surrounding regions faced Mongol raids and instability continuously. Provinces loyal to the caliphate were terrorized actively. Political control fragmented further under Mongol pressure consistently. Abbasid sovereignty in Iraq effectively ceased permanently. Reconstruction efforts were attempted decades later, but slowly. Baghdad never regained its former glory or influence effectively. Economic, political, and cultural recovery was limited regionally. The city remained weakened and overshadowed permanently. The sack marked the effective end of Abbasid power actively. Caliphal authority became symbolic, powerless, and confined. Empire-wide control had vanished after centuries of decline. Abbasid political dominance was permanently terminated in Baghdad. Mongol destruction reshaped the Middle East dramatically and quickly. Trade, culture, and population centers shifted elsewhere consistently. Baghdad's fall influenced future political and military developments permanently. Empire fragmentation accelerated under Mongol influence immediately. Religious and scholarly networks were dispersed across the Islamic world. Survivors fled to Egypt, Syria, and Persia actively. Knowledge and traditions persisted, but Baghdad was no longer central. Cultural continuity survived in exile, though city influence vanished permanently. The Mongol sack became a symbol of Abbasid vulnerability actively. No caliph could recover centralized political or military control consistently. The empire's fragmentation was cemented after centuries of decline. Baghdad's destruction marked a decisive historical turning point permanently. After Baghdad's fall, Abbasid caliphs survived symbolically. They moved to Cairo under Mamluk protection actively. Political authority was limited to ceremonial and religious matters. Real power rested with regional rulers and sultans permanently. Abbasid influence over distant provinces disappeared gradually. Governors and dynasties ruled autonomously without caliphal interference consistently. Control over military, economy, and law shifted locally. Centralized governance was effectively non-existent permanently. The caliphate existed mainly for religious legitimacy actively. Caliphs performed ceremonial duties and symbolic rituals consistently. They endorsed sultans and rulers to legitimize authority. Political power was reduced to ceremonial influence permanently. Regional dynasties like the Fatimids and Seljuks dominated actively. Military, taxation, and administration were controlled locally consistently. Abbasid caliphs lacked means to enforce commands effectively. Empire-wide authority vanished, while symbolic leadership persisted permanently. Trade, military, and diplomacy were handled by local powers actively. Baghdad's destruction limited imperial networks significantly. Sultans, governors, and dynasties made independent strategic decisions. Political fragmentation defined the post-Abbasid period permanently. Military control was entirely outside caliphal authority actively. Elite troops and local armies answered to regional leaders consistently. Caliphs could not mobilize forces for empire-wide defense effectively. Military power no longer supported centralized political control permanently. Economic administration was decentralized and locally managed actively. Tax collection, markets, and trade operated independently consistently. Baghdad and Cairo depended on sultans for fiscal stability effectively. Abbasid caliphs had minimal financial resources permanently. Cultural and religious influence remained, but political clout declined actively. Scholars, mosques, and religious institutions acknowledged caliphal authority consistently. Religious legitimacy continued without real governance power effectively. Abbasids became spiritual figureheads rather than RU. Attempts to reclaim political authority failed repeatedly. Local powers resisted any centralizing efforts actively. Revolts and power struggles reinforced autonomy of regional leaders. Caliphal influence never returned to former political heights permanently. The Mamluk sultans of Egypt hosted caliphs for legitimacy actively. Caliphs endorsed rulers in exchange for protection consistently. Real decision-making was handled by military and administrative authorities effectively. Abbasids survived as ceremonial leaders permanently. By the late medieval period, Abbasid political dominance ended fully. Regional dynasties governed independently without deference to Baghdad actively. The empire was fragmented and central authority irrelevant consistently. Abbasids retained prestige, but not real political power permanently. Military, fiscal, and administrative functions were controlled by sultans actively. Caliphs could only sanction actions symbolically consistently. Decentralized governance defined the political landscape effectively. Abbasid role in governance was entirely ceremonial permanently. The shift marked the end of imperial unity actively. Political authority was fragmented across Middle Eastern territories consistently. Sultans exercised real power, while caliphs provided legitimacy effectively. Abbasid central dominance ceased permanently after centuries of rule. Religious and cultural influence persisted, despite political decline actively. Caliphs were respected for lineage and religious authority consistently. Scholarly and spiritual networks maintained Abbasid symbolic prestige effectively. Political relevance was lost, while cultural authority endured. Historical legacy survived through intellectual, religious, and cultural contributions actively. Abbasid achievements in knowledge and art outlasted political power consistently. Caliphs became symbols of Islamic heritage and continuity effectively. End of political dominance did not erase their hiss. The Abbasid era closed as a political force definitively. Decentralization, invasions, and local dynasties ended imperial authority actively. Caliphs retained spiritual respect, but no governing power consistently. Baghdad's fall and fragmentation marked permanent political conclusion permanently. Abbasids shaped Islamic civilization across centuries. Their governance, culture, and scholarship inspired generations actively. Cities like Baghdad became centers of knowledge. Intellectual life flourished under caliphal patronage consistently. The House of Wisdom preserved priceless manuscripts diligently. Greek, Persian, and Indian texts were translated carefully. Scholars studied philosophy, medicine, and astronomy intensely. Knowledge accumulated in libraries influenced the Islamic world permanently. Abbasids fostered science, mathematics, and medical discoveries actively. Al-Khwarizmi developed algebra and systematic calculation methods. Astronomers charted stars and planetary movements accurately. Medicine advanced through hospitals and scholarly inquiry consistently. Cultural achievements included literature, poetry, and art actively. Calligraphy, architecture, and decorative arts thrived in cities. Mosques and palaces reflected sophistication and aesthetic refinement. Patronage nurtured creative expression across the empire permanently. Trade networks connected Asia, Africa, and Europe efficiently. Merchants transported silk, spices, and precious metals widely. Economic prosperity funded education, art, and military endeavors. Baghdad's wealth reinforced its position as a global hub permanently. Legal scholarship codified Sharia and governance practices actively. Jurists developed Sunni jurisprudence to guide society consistently. Caliphal courts enforced law across diverse populations effectively. Abbasid jurisprudence influenced Islamic law for centuries permanently. Education flourished in madrasas and urban centers actively. Students studied theology, philosophy, and natural sciences consistently. Knowledge dissemination strengthened cultural cohesion and intellectual growth. Abbasid emphasis on learning left lasting societal impact permanently. The caliphs supported scholars, poets, and philosophers actively. Intellectual patronage encouraged debate, research, and creativity consistently. Centers of learning became magnets for regional and foreign scholars. Cultural prestige reinforced Abbasid influence across distant lands permanently. Abbasid innovations reached Europe and influenced the Renaissance actively. Translated texts shaped European medicine, mathematics, and philosophy consistently. Knowledge preserved in Baghdad contributed to Western intellectual revival. Scholarly legacy crossed continents, impacting global civilization. Architecture and urban planning reflected Abbasid sophistication actively. Round cities, mosques, and canals demonstrated organized engineering consistently. Urban centers balanced function, beauty, and symbolic meaning effectively. City design influenced later Islamic and world architecture permanently. Religious scholarship harmonized diverse Islamic traditions actively. Sunni orthodoxy was systematized under Abbasid guidance consistently. Clerics, scholars, and educators shaped spiritual and social norms. Faith and knowledge intertwined in intellectual life permanently. Artistic expression celebrated culture, religion, and daily life actively. Calligraphy adorned manuscripts, buildings, and public spaces consistently. Poetry and literature reflected human experience and philosophical thought. Cultural achievements enriched society beyond politics and war permanently. Abbasid administration emphasized bureaucracy and organization actively. Centralized governance improved justice, taxation, and military efficiency consistently. Persian administrative practices strengthened imperial control and civic order. Governance innovations influenced later Islamic and world. Cities like Baghdad, Samarra, and Cairo thrived under leadership actively. Markets, libraries, and academies attracted intellectuals and traders consistently. Urban life reflected cosmopolitanism, diversity, and prosperity effectively. Abbasid cities became centers of learning and culture permanently. The caliphate inspired future dynasties and empires actively. Ideas in governance, law, and science spread widely consistently. Abbasid influence shaped political and intellectual traditions globally. Legacy endured even after political decline permanently. Science, art, and philosophy flourished under caliphal support actively. Astronomy, medicine, and mathematics advanced knowledge worldwide consistently. Innovations and discoveries crossed borders through trade and scholarship. Intellectual impact influenced generations far beyond the empire per main. Abbasid patronage encouraged translation and preservation actively. Greek and Indian classics survived through Arabic scholarship consistently. Transmission of knowledge bridged cultures across continents effectively. Cultural memory preserved learning through turbulent times permanently. Religious tolerance enabled diverse scholars to contribute actively. Muslims, Christians, Jews, and others collaborated in knowledge consistently. Cultural and intellectual exchange strengthened empire-wide enlightenment effectively. Pluralism enriched scientific and artistic achievements permanently. Education and scholarship created a legacy of inquiry actively. Libraries, academies, and observatories nurtured critical thought consistently. Abbasid emphasis on reasoning influenced scientific methodology worldwide. Intellectual tradition persisted long after political power waned permanently. Abbasids are remembered not for conquest, but enlightenment actively. Cultural, scientific, and intellectual contributions define their historical significance. Military expansion was secondary to knowledge and creativity consistently. Legacy endures as a beacon of learning permanently. Caliphal cities became symbols of intellectual and artistic life actively. Baghdad epitomized urban sophistication, learning, and cosmopolitan culture consistently. Architectural and scholarly achievements inspired subsequent civilizations globally. Abbasid capitals set standards for culture and gov. The empire's influence spanned continents and centuries actively. Ideas, science, and law traveled beyond the Islamic world consistently. Abbasid achievements shaped Europe, Asia, and Africa effectively. Civilizational impact endured far beyond political boundaries permanently. Abbasid legacy demonstrates power of knowledge and culture actively. Civilization flourished through scholarship, art, and intellectual endeavor consistently. Enlightenment, not conquest, became the empire's lasting hallmark. History remembers Abbasids for wisdom and progress permanently.